Dickerson.
What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Leinart, 2004 Heisman Trophy winner.
Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you listen to the Harris Highlight Show. Enjoy it.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from Monrovia, California, this is the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our college football analyst, Josh Schaefer, our executive producer, Brady Klain, and I'm your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Well, guys, Lyle, we don't know where he's at. He said he's having computer problems, internet problems, so the second Lyle joins, he'll be added to the show, but until then, it's just the three of us. So, guys, without Lyle here to ruin the show, how are you two doing this fine week?
Oh, what a lovely and completely not stressful week. The least stressful and annoying week I've probably ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
This week has been absolutely awful for this main reason is the fact that not only do I lose my first-round pick, Saquon Barkley, for the year, I've officially now lost my second-round pick, George Kittle, for the year. I noticed that, I don't know if you guys saw this, guys, but Garrett, because they announced George Kittle's out for 8 weeks, meaning if he comes back, it'll be for week 17 of the NFL season. Well, fantasy playoffs are done week 17, so Garrett thought it'd be a smart idea to pick up George Kittle for whatever reason, even though he's currently, I don't even think you guys have noticed this, going against our own rules of having the 3 IR spots, and he's rostering George Kittle with that 3rd IR spot. So our very own Garrett Otto is cheating. He's cheating the system. He's cheating the system. So that's something to take a look on. So my fantasy
I thought we changed those rules.
No, so it's 2 IR and then 1 for COVID. And he's got 3 IR. So I got 1 because I got Jamal Williams on there because, COVID. So something to keep an eye on because, again, cheating the system. They're cheating the system. All right, so, guys, it's time to move on.
Garrett is committing fraud.
And he's the commissioner.
Blatant, straight fraud.
And he's the commissioner. As you can see, guys, Harris Highlights 2020. It's the easy decision right here. Unfortunately, I just confirmed that only 14 people wrote me in on their ballot for the entire election. So Harris Highlights 2020 was a bust, but hey, Harris Highlights 2024, maybe we can get some momentum going for that.
You should run with Mark.
Run with Mark. Hey, man, I'm telling you, man, if I'm still here in Monrovia in a year or two, I'm running for mayor. I'm taking Tom Adams down. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at the HHShow_. And make sure you guys follow us on Instagram at Harris Highlight Show. Listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The link to that is in the description of this video. You guys can help the show out by donating to the Super Chat, which, by the way, guys, I did count up last week. We did get $35 last week. So after the show, the Venmo for, 4 divided by 35. What is that? 7, 8? I don't know, $8.50.
Ask Nevada.
I can't do math. I'll ask Nevada, but that's going to take us a few days to get the answer on that. So you guys can help the show out via the Super Chat. You guys can ask us questions. Here are our thoughts on certain games, players, topics, anything like that. So it helps the show, and it helps us answer your guys' question. You guys can also become Patreon members for little as $1 a month. I think in the coming weeks, we're finally going to get that group StreamYard, Zoom, Q&A sesh with all of our members that we have, in our Patreon Fantasy Football League. So if you guys want to be in on exclusive Zoom stream, okay, we don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to do a video chat somehow. Make sure to go over there.
Big Q&A.
A big Q&A. The link is in the description of this video. All that stuff is going to be down there at the bottom. Yeah, guys, I think it's time now to officially start talking some college football. Biggest takeaways from week 9. We're already somehow in week 9 of the college football season. That just doesn't seem right. It seems weird. I mean, Technically, it's kind of like week 4 or 5 when all the big guys came back, but it's week 9 nonetheless. And the Pac-12 is officially starting the season in week 9. As you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about the Pac-12 later in the show, probably in the next 30, 40 or so minutes, because we have the topics to talk about, some of our segments, and then we'll be getting to the Pac-12. So for all of you people that are just dying to hear us talking about Pac-12 after dark, dying to hear our thoughts on Washington State, Oregon State, your time's coming. We're going to get to that later in the show. But guys, takeaways from week 9. We just talked about the Pac-12, but let's start over with the Big 12. Oklahoma State, they were the only undefeated team in the Big 12 remaining. They lost a close one in overtime to Texas. Another fantastic game. Joe Davis was great on the call yet again. So guys, with Oklahoma State, we kind of talked about in previous shows that it seemed like the Cowboys were the Big 12's only kind of real chance now at cracking the playoff, because Texas, their season's gone downhill. Oklahoma, their season's gone downhill. No one else in the Big 12 was really doing anything. Oklahoma State was that one chance they had. They lost. I have to go and check the AP poll to see where exactly they fell in the rankings. It couldn't have been too far, but I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State loses another game this year. So after all this, talk about the Big 12 guys, do you think that they were officially done now in regards to the college football playoff?
They dropped to 14th, Blake. Oklahoma State.
They dropped to 14. So they can still climb back up.
Yeah.
But again, with the teams they got to play on their schedule, I wouldn't be shocked if they lose one more game. So we'll have to see. Oh no, what do we have here?
I think we got a Post-it note.
Oh,
this was from last week's show. It says Texas beats Oklahoma State by 10 plus. Blake, you were close.
Okay, they won by 3.
You guaranteed it. They won 41-34.
Okay.
Close.
Now, there you go. So last week, I think is when I said Shane Buechele was going to throw for like 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and SMU lost by about 40 points. But before we quickly dive into the Big 12, as Brady pointed out, our man Samuel Wu, I graduated from USC and just started ASU this semester for grad school. That seems like an interesting transition. You graduate from SC, and then you go to ASU for grad school. I don't think I've ever heard of, it seems like maybe doing like ASU and then you go to USC for the grad school. But nonetheless, congrats, Samuel. It was a tough choice, but I'm rooting for ASU until USC fires Clay Helton. Well, as we do every year when Clay Helton's mentioned, Josh whips out his spitting facts. So we're going to save the ASU-USC discussion because I know for a fact we're going to bring up Clay Helton and USC when we get to the Pac-12 preview later. So Sam, if you want to hear Josh's thoughts, his candid thoughts, his amazing thoughts on Clay Helton and USC, stick around for, like I said, 30, 40 minutes in the show, and we're going to be giving you our full thoughts on that. But thanks for the donation. Fight on, forks up, and hope you're up at 9 a.m. for a great game this upcoming weekend. All right, guys, back to the Big 12. Again, I just said everything. Are they done in regards to competing for a playoff spot?
Yeah, and I think the only realistic chance that the Big 12 has at this point is if Oklahoma State wins out. And by wins out, I mean wins out convincingly, goes to the Big 12 championship game, and wins handedly. That's the only chance I think they've got. I don't think that's likely that they get a chance to get into the playoffs. Do I think that Oklahoma State is going to win the Big 12? I don't know. I think that's plausible. I think that's a plausible assumption that Oklahoma State still competes for the Big 12. No, I don't think anybody from the Big 12 is going to go to the playoff. And the reason why is, I think that the Pac-12 has gotten a lot of hate in recent years. And one of our biggest arguments about in support of the Pac-12 is how competitive it is. And it's just a constant competition every year. And yes, I think that the Pac-12 is a better conference when you have schools like USC and Oregon that are both really good. And then the rest of the teams all compete behind them. That's just an example because that's what we're going to have this year. The issue with the Big 12 this year is that I don't think it is competitive. I think it's inconsistent. You don't have those teams that every week are, all right, this is going to be a really good game, and these two teams are going to have a really good game. No, who knows? Who knows? The jury's out on the Big 12 for the rest of the season, and that's why it's entertaining. It is not competitive, and they will not compete for a playoff spot. That's just, they're just painfully inconsistent. Sure, entertaining, inconsistent, and they won't go to the playoff.
I will say this right now as I'm getting a number pulled up. Oh, I have a new setup. I got a new screen over there so I can look at two screens now. This is great.
Wow.
Yeah. The only thing that is consistent in the Big 12 is one moment. Sport Reference is being laggy. The only consistent thing that we have so far in the Big 12 this year is Texas Tech's passing offense averaging about 375 yards a game. That's the only consistent thing we have in the Pac-12 this year. In the Big 12 this year. In the Big 12. It doesn't matter, who's good, who's bad. Texas Tech's always going to put up, 500 something yards every week. And they've done that a couple times this season. So, the Big 12, I think with the Texas, we talked about this a few weeks back, is, someone asked in the Q&A is, what are the odds that, Texas and Oklahoma both finish unranked? Well, there's a possibility because it's the Big 12. They've been incredibly inconsistent. And I think you're going to have a tough time making any case for a spot in the college football playoff unless some reason, every single Pac-12 team goes 4-4.
Well, just like this, since I am the host of the show, I have the power. Watch this. Lyle, you're back in. Lyle joins us. It's almost like he's a guest or something. Lyle, we're throwing you into the fire right now. Big 12, are they done? Can a Big 12 team reach the college football playoff?
What a perfect time for Big L to hop in here.
Perfect time to enter the show. Yeah, they're done. Oklahoma State was their only chance. They lose this weekend. They blow a lead. Yeah, it's done. I mean, there's a couple teams in the ACC fighting. You have Clemson and Notre Dame. You have Ohio State in the Big Ten. You have Alabama in the SEC. And then there's teams ahead of the Big 12 that are fighting, including some Pac-12 teams that are about to start up this weekend, Oregon, USC, etc. I've said the Big 12's had an even more down year than usual from the start of this season. With Oklahoma State being their last chance, their lone undefeated team finally loses. I think that's about it for the Big 12.
Can I interrupt real quick? Can we get a "you're done" Big 12, please?
What, you're done Big 12? Like that?
Yeah, like that.
Like that. They're done.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the standings in the Big 12 right now. Guys, without looking at these right now, again, I don't know if these are like if the season were actually it is if the season were to end today because these are the two best teams. If the Big 12 said, you know what, we're ending the season right now. We're cutting things. We're having our Big 12 title game this weekend. Can you guys guess who the two teams would be that would be in the Big 12 title game if it were played this weekend?
I'm going to say Oklahoma State and Iowa State. I feel like that's wrong, though.
That was going to be my guess.
I'm going to go Oklahoma State and Kansas State.
Well, it looks like Brady was ahead of the game looking at my notes as he always does. It would be Iowa State and Kansas State.
So I wasn't right.
So none of us were right.
I said Oklahoma State and Kansas State.
I was expecting Brady to be right. I should know better than that. But guys, yeah, Iowa State and Kansas State, they're both 4-1. Oklahoma State's 3-1. So those would be the two teams that would be in the Big 12 title game right now. Oklahoma State, they are the highest ranked team at 14. Iowa State's at 17. Oklahoma's at 19. Texas is at 22. But it seems like the Oklahoma-Texas, although they're probably without a doubt the two best teams in the conference, with two losses, it seems like it's going to be impossible for them to try to crash into the in the playoff. And again, Oklahoma State, they only have one loss. Kansas State, they only have one loss. Iowa State, they have one loss. They very well potentially can win out, but are they realistically going to do that? Probably not. So unfortunately, the Big 12, it looks like you're done, which does bring us to the topic I want to bring up next. Let's just say the Big 12 has no team. Guys, Cincinnati. This was a game I watched pretty much all the way through because I had money on the over in Cincinnati-Memphis. And by the way, I don't know if you guys watched this game. The over wasn't going to hit, and there was about a minute left. Cincinnati was up by like 35 points. It's like 3rd and 4 on like the 50-yard line, and they just hand it off to the running back who literally houses at 50 yards, gets into the end zone, a meaningless touchdown, the over hits. But guys, Cincinnati, my goodness, I picked Memphis last week. I was the only one that did just because we've seen what Brady White and this Memphis offense can do. Cincinnati made Memphis look like they were the Pasadena City College Lancers out there. Memphis looked awful offensively. Their only touchdown was like a
specific comparison.
Was like a 95-yard touchdown that shouldn't have even been a touchdown. Their offense looked horrible. Cincinnati's defense, not getting enough credit, I think. Statistic-wise, they're like top 5 in every defensive category you possibly can imagine. I'm sold. I am sold on Cincinnati being by far the best group of 5 team. BYU, they're in second, but I mean, group of 5 independent, same thing. Cincinnati, guys, they're legit. I think they come in, again, I don't even look at this anymore. They're number 6 now in the country. And with all these Power 5 teams playing again, it's not like how Coastal Carolina, these other teams, they were ranked somewhere. Then these teams started coming and they kind of pushed them. Cincinnati, they're ranked number 6. They're going to stay number 6 until they lose the game. And if we see, we got a game this weekend with Clemson and Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses, they're going to drop. Cincinnati, they're going to move up to number 5. Do you guys think with the Big 12 being out, the Pac-12, for the most part, unless someone just absolutely runs the table, they're likely not going to get someone in? We've seen it with the SEC. Teams can fall. Do you guys think that Cincinnati can convince the committee that them being the first group of 5 team worthy of being in the college football playoff?
I think they can, and here's why. They already have 2 convincing ranked wins. And yeah, I know that this is a strange season. The way that I see it is, with how strange this season is already, the Big 12 hasn't been good. It's been 2 weeks and the Big 10 hasn't been good. So look, I think that some of these group of 5 schools that are ranked, that are consistently winning games and playing good football, I'll take them a little more seriously than I have in recent years, I think. So, and with that being said, Cincinnati already has 2 convincing ranked wins. They've also killed a really good Memphis team that we've all said has been competitive over the last couple of years. They have Houston this week. They play UCF later this month. With that being said, they're averaging nearly 40 points a game at 39.6. They have a top 15 offense in the country, a top 18 defense in the country. Their points per game numbers, their passing yards per game, their rushing yards per game, their defensive yards allowed per game and points allowed per game. They are comparable with every other team in the playoff conversation right now in college football. There is no reason why we can't include them in, especially in a strange season like this where the Big 12 is likely out. The Big 10 outside of Ohio State is likely out. The Pac-12 is unpredictable at this point, including Oregon and USC. And for all of those reasons, I think that Cincinnati does have a legitimate argument to be a playoff contender at this point.
I think they do, but I think when it comes down to strength of schedule, it's still going to be tough. Look, even if Notre Dame loses this week, which we think they will, they'll drop. Cincinnati will move up. You've still got Clemson. You've still got Alabama. You've still got Ohio State. I mean, those 3 feel like locks, right? And if it's going to come down to the Pac-12 with a shortened schedule in Cincinnati, it's a better chance than UCF had back in 2017 because the Pac-12 isn't playing as many games, or the Power 5 conferences aren't playing as many games. It still feels like to me that when it comes down to strength of schedule, despite what their schedules showed itself for early on in this season, if Oregon goes out there and wins the Pac-12, especially considering people had them as a top 12 consensus team at the start of the year, I feel like they would still get the edge. Now, we'll have to see how they play, or if it's USC that goes undefeated, we'll have to see how they play. I'm with Josh. I think there's a better chance this year than there has been in years past. When it all comes down to it, I still don't quite see it happening, although I think it's going to be closer.
I think Cincinnati, I've said this in weeks past, especially in the pick'ems, is I'm a big fan of Cincinnati, what they're doing this year. Luke Fickell's been a great head coach at Cincinnati. You're expecting him to maybe move up and get a bigger job, but unless, they dump a bunch of money, he'll stay there. Desmond Ritter's been a great quarterback so far this year. He's 81 for 125 on the season. He has almost 1,000 yards. He's 6 passing yards shy of 1,000 with 10 touchdowns. So I think he's been doing a great job. Lyle, like you said a second ago, their strength of schedule. They come in at 75th out of 115 so far that have played in strength of schedule. So it's, middle of the pack in strength, but I'll try to find out what UCF's was in 2016 or 2017 was to see, everyone was saying UCF deserved this, UCF deserved that, but what was their strength of schedule? How did they fare against their other opponents?
Well, remember, they beat Auburn at the end of the year. So whatever their end of season strength of schedule was, it'll be better. That's the thing that makes it tough, too, is it's easy to say that 2017 UCF team is better than this Cincinnati team, because what everybody remembers is UCF won that New Year's Six game against Auburn, an SEC powerhouse. We're not going to see that in the regular season with Cincinnati. And it's just a question of, will we get to see it come January, or will we get to see it come January? It'll be a toss-up. I mean, again, it feels like 3 teams are locks, but Pac-12 versus Group of 5, it still feels like they favor a Power 5 school.
In 2017, UCF's strength of schedule was 75 out of 130.
Yeah, that won't get the job done.
won't
I
get
mean, looking at Cincinnati's schedule, it's not like awful by any means. You know, Army, it's a good win against Army. They were ranked when they played them. SMU was ranked 16th when they dismantled them. Memphis, everyone knows that they're a good team. Houston's a decent team. UCF, they might be ranked when they play them. So it's not, a top 20, top 25 schedule, but I definitely think it's going to be higher than what Brady just said, like 75th, 76th ranked schedule. This might be like in the 40s or 50s or something like that. But again, we've talked about this in shows in the past with such an awful year in college football, with so many conferences playing so few games. I get the playoff committee is in their contract. They can't do anything, but this literally would have been the most perfect opportunity to say this year only until our next contract and however many years, we are going to do an 8-team playoff, because then you put Cincinnati in. And the college football playoff committee, it's a win-win situation for them. If you put Cincinnati, and let's say Cincinnati runs the table, they finish undefeated, and then they finish as the 6th seed. And let's say they play Ohio State as the 3 seed. If Cincinnati beats Ohio State, then all of a sudden, okay, yeah, they're capable of, beating these kind of teams. Maybe moving forward now we can consider them more, as we saw what UCF did a few years ago against Auburn. They beat them. They almost beat LSU. Now, granted, LSU was missing half their team a few years ago, but UCF still almost pulled off that win. Also, if Cincinnati gets absolutely blown out by Ohio State, then it's okay. Maybe this adds to our case that a group of 5 team isn't necessarily ready. But again, I know it's not going to happen. This would be the perfect time to have. And again, with the PAC-12, maybe a Big 12 team coming in, this gives them a chance to reach the top 8. Because again, I think we can all agree, Oklahoma, Texas, they're likely a lot better than what their ranking says they are. They're not going to finish the season because of that. And with such few games, it's not going to give teams a chance, because Oregon, for example, I know we're going to talk about this when we get to the Pac-12 later in the show. This weekend's game with Cal and Washington has been canceled. They can't postpone because there's no weeks to make it up. So they're only going to play a 5-game regular season, a 6-game schedule now with that championship weekend. So let's say Oregon has 1 game get canceled this year. They can't make it up. They run the table. They're obviously the best team in the Pac-12, and they go 6-0. Is going 6-0 going to be enough, to get them in over some of these other teams, where it very well could be, but we're not entirely sure. Whereas if this was an 8-team playoff, maybe Oregon would be able to get in. But I just want to bring up one other thing before I move on, guys. I just want to bring up BYU very quickly, just because BYU, I think they're ranked they're ranked 9 now, so they're in the top 10. They only have 3 games remaining on their schedule. They do play Boise State tomorrow, their first ranked opponent of the year. I think they're at Boise. Yeah, so they're at Boise State. If BYU is able to pull off this win at Boise State, guys, a huge win for them. They do play North Alabama the next week, and then they play San Diego State the week after. So based on this, we've seen BYU. I know Josh is fully sold on Zach Wilson now being a legitimate quarterback. Let's say BYU runs the table, they finish undefeated, and maybe Cincinnati loses. Maybe Cincinnati has a slip up. Do you think there's any chance? Again, BYU only has 3 games left. That BYU, I think they'd be 8-0 if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. So they're actually no, they'd be 10-0. I forgot they added a lot of games to the schedule. So a 10-0 BYU team, guys. Their only decent win would be against Boise State on the road. Do you think BYU potentially can make any sort of playoff push, depending on how things might fall?
Yes, but also I want to point out that they absolutely destroyed Army in the first game of the year, and Army's right on the fringe of a top 25 team. At least
it was Navy.
Right now. Navy. You're right. So I guess Navy's kind of out of the picture, aren't they? Oops. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they should be able to make a push, because they also, the schedule is not great. But I think the actual way that they've been playing football this season has kind of warranted an argument. Like, for me personally, right now, I'm going to give the edge to Cincinnati, and I think they're going to get a couple more of those ranked wins. Again, like, if BYU goes undefeated, I think there are teams on that schedule that you can say are on the edge of being a top 25 team in a strange college football season, but I don't know. They do deserve consideration, but it's also, they need to consider where Cincinnati's at by the end of the season if BYU is still undefeated, and where maybe there's a runner-up in the Big Ten, and where USC and Oregon are, and all that.
This is why we need 8 teams, because then if BYU goes
especially
undefeated,
this year, like
I mean,
you were right.
even-
Like I don't know if you can like just in general. I'm not saying like the 8 team is. I'm not sold on the 8 teams right away, but like you're right. Like if there was a year to do it, it was absolutely this year because there's no way I think you can settle on 4 teams at least through 8 weeks of the season. I'm not sold on 4 teams and only 4 teams. I'm sold on 2, 3, maybe.
because then you can say, you know what, you get Clemson in the playoff, you're going to get obliterated, but here you go. This is your prize.
I don't even know what's
wrong.
Yeah, I don't even know what the holdup is, not just from a college football standpoint about giving teams a chance and the competitive side of it. You just make so much more money. You've seen all these sports expand their playoffs this year. I hate 16 teams in the MLB playoff. I hate that only 1 team gets a bye now in the NFL playoffs. But they're expanding it because they know they're making way more money with more teams playing, especially in this year where college football knows they've lost revenue with how many teams are losing out on games. It seemed like the year to certainly give it a test run. If you don't like it, you can always go back to the 4 team.
Bingo.
Blake, I will say this a second ago. You said, can a 6-0 Oregon, would they be playoff worthy? Well, it all, I'll keep this very quick. It all comes down to, is one of those wins the conference championship? If they're 6-0, if, all right, say 2 of the games that get canceled for them are against ranked opponents, then you'll look at it. If they're against lower level opponents who finish the year at a low level of schedule and have a losing record, then I could see where a 6-0 Oregon could possibly squeak in to a playoff consideration.
Yeah. That's why I just feel like, I mean, we'll have to see how the season plays out, but I just have a feeling that there could be potentially one of those years where there's like 3 or 4 teams that are deserving. Because again, as I think it was Lyle that said it, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, we assume those are going to be the 3. So when it comes down to that 4th spot, it's going to be between potentially no Big 12, potentially no Pac-12, because it seems like Oregon is the best chance. SC would have to probably go undefeated, have Oregon lose or something to run the table. Maybe no Pac-12. Then you're just asking for chaos, which I'm down for. But guys, speaking of Big 10, we just talked about Ohio State being essentially a lock. Again, I think we all can agree they're going to finish undefeated. Let's say they don't. Because looking at the Big 12 now, guys, let me see if I can get their standings loaded up right here. Big 10, I should say. Things are an absolute mess in the Big 10. Indiana's leading the East, so that explains how that's going. Although they're tied with Ohio State, they just give them the tiebreaker right here. Maybe because I comes before O. Michigan, they're 1-1.
Blake knows his letters.
But Michigan, they're 1-1 after an awful loss to Michigan State, who I think no one thought is going to be even a 500 team this year. Michigan, you're done in typical Lyle fashion right there. Penn State.
Bro, I said Michigan State was back.
Well, that was a hot take that turned out to be right. Penn State, granted 2 tough losses. You're 0-2. You're done. We thought they'd be potentially a team that can make a push. Wisconsin, you're ranked number 10 in the country. You might not play another game the rest of the season. You're done. So just like that, guys, Ohio State, if they lose a game, I know Indiana's ranked 13. Sorry, Brady. I think we'll find out this weekend. They might be done unless Indiana just shocks the world, makes the playoff in a crazy season. If Ohio State, guys, drops a game, maybe depending on how other teams are going, maybe depending on who they lose to. I'm looking at their schedule right now. What's going to happen? Because no other team. We talked about the Big 12. Maybe things go certain teams' way, and Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Oklahoma, they might work their way up. It's literally, unless Ohio State is it, unless Indiana goes undefeated, no Big 10 team has any chance at reaching the playoff anymore. And this is after 2 weeks.
Okay, but let's say that this is the year for Big Jim and the Wolverines, right? And they beat Ohio State. So let's say Michigan beats Ohio State. And Michigan, for the sake of this argument, let's say they're fine this year. So they lose to Michigan State, whatever. How many games they play in? 7? Let's say that Michigan's 4-3 this season. Whatever. But they beat Ohio State. Regardless of what that record is for Michigan.
There we go.
Regardless of what that record is for Michigan, the reason the playoff edge goes to Ohio State over a team like Cincinnati or BYU or maybe the runner-up in the SEC, that's maybe pushing it. I think another SEC team could get in, but the reason why that Michigan record is irrelevant is because that Ohio State loss is to a Big Ten team, that was 4-3 in a crazy college football season that was unpredictable from day one. That's why I think that Ohio State still gets that edge, even if they lose to Michigan State or Michigan or Indiana. Like, no offense. But like, I think they get that edge because if you look at the Big Ten, I think they are going to be a competitive conference internally this year, maybe not on a national level, but internally the Big Ten is going to compete with itself this year. And Ohio State's the team to beat. And behind them, I don't see anybody else getting in, but I still think a one-loss Ohio State team that wins the Big Ten title gets the edge over a lot of other teams in college football.
Northwestern is currently leading the West. They're tied with Purdue. They are both 2-0. So, guys, if you had entering week 3 of the Big Ten schedule that Northwestern and Purdue would be leading the West, well, you would have won a whole lot of money on that. A whole lot of money on that. But unfortunately, Northwestern, no.
And Purdue's doing it without their best player.
Yeah. So, boy.
Here's the thing about if Ohio State loses, though, right? And it's kind of off of Josh's point. Somebody has to get into the playoff, right? Say Ohio State loses. The committee says, well, the Pac-12 hasn't played enough games. Hypothetically, to your guys' point, if Oregon has one canceled, then that's a 5-game slate. Somebody has to still get in. And if it's Clemson and Alabama, I don't really think the other two teams are actually going to be BYU and Cincinnati. So somebody still has to get in. I think if Ohio State loses, that does not help. But it depends on where they lose, too. If they lose in the next week, 2 weeks, and they come back and blow everybody out and still win the Big Ten, I think they'd probably be fine. Like we always talk about, though, if you lose late, that's when it hurts. So if Ohio State loses early, they'll be fine. I don't think they lose at all, but I think if they lose late, that's when things get tricky because then it's the knee-jerk reaction and that effect where then the committee says, well, they just lost in their biggest game of the year. Should they be moved out? I think they'll be fine, but somebody still has to get in is my point. And Ohio State, we know, is really, really good.
Yeah, so I got their schedule up right now, and for the most part, so they got Rutgers, Maryland, win. They do play number 13 ranked Indiana in a few weeks. We'll see how that goes to see if Indiana is actually just going to mess around and be legit. Illinois, Michigan State, those should both be wins. And their last game of the season, they do play Michigan, so that could be a huge one. And depending on how things shape out in the Big Ten, I would assume maybe Michigan's going to be the other team in the championship game. Who knows? Maybe it's Northwestern, maybe it's Purdue, maybe Nebraska somehow gets in there. But yeah, as Lyle mentioned, if they lose early, that might be the best. If they don't lose until, let's say they run the table and then they lose in the Big Ten title game to Michigan, then you have a discussion that's going to be an absolute fun one because that's going to be tough.
Well, I was about to say I should have added this. When I say if they lose in the next week or two, it makes it better on their part because they'd have more games to make up. I should have mentioned Ohio State's November slate of games, no offense, Brady, is so weak. Like they're going to hang on those games.
Hang on. I just got to say, why does it, whenever anyone says anything negative, like no offense, like I'm like the ugly stepchild of the show. Like, yeah, I get it. We're not great. We're having a decent year, but like, hey, no offense, Lyle, but Notre Dame's good. Like, oh, I don't get it. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm obviously kidding and joking, but like it's happened like 3 or 4 or 5 times today. They're like, well, I don't know, Brady. Like they're gonna lose to Ohio State. Obvious, duh.
Right, so never mind. No beating around the bush. November slate for Ohio State is so weak. Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Illinois. They will most likely cakewalk through all those games. Probably Michigan State too. And Michigan, if it's been any indication over the last few years, Ohio State will also win that game. So,
yeah, I hate to break it to you, Lyle, but Notre Dame, man, they're a good football team. They got sorry to tell you, Lyle, but they got a tough game this weekend.
They do. They in fact do. Brady's going to crack and go off on these fools.
Josh, you just missed a rant.
Oh no! What happened? You could have been more considerate once I turned my camera off.
Just gotta respect Brady and Indiana. But again,
it's not even that. But like I said, like what is Indiana, like the ugly stepchild like of the show? Like yeah, I get we're decent this year, but Lyle was like, no offense, Brady, but like Ohio State's November schedule is good. I'm like,
no, I said it's weak. I said it's weak.
I'm like, yeah, I know. Like I'm as shocked as anybody else that I use good this year. Like. I'm not like I'm riding high on this because who the hell knows when it's going to happen again.
Well, the Big Ten, it has the chance to be a mess. Hopefully, Ohio State doesn't lose to Rutgers or Illinois, make this thing worse than it needs to be. But yeah, 2 weeks in, Big Ten. We thought a lot of teams were gonna make a push, but it turns out they're not going to. Final thing before we move on to some other segments. Again, if there's anything you'd like to hear our thoughts on, game, player, upcoming game, anything, you guys can leave a donation in the super chat like our man did, Samuel, earlier in the show. We can give our thoughts and 2 cents on that. But guys, our final thing, this is going to be about Clemson. So our man, Andrew Koster, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to sneak him into the show. So Andrew, if you're still watching, drop some comments with your thoughts on this and we'll throw them on the screen to, add our own thoughts on that. But guys, Clemson, they look bad this weekend. I had the -24. They messed up my 18 parlay that would have paid $2,000. So Clemson, I hate you. I'm upset at you. You guys stink, but they look bad. I mean, Boston College was the better team for 3/4 of that game. And then in the fourth quarter, they just forgot how to play football. They looked awful. Clemson looked like the dominant team that we're used to seeing. But for the 3/4 of that game, Clemson, they were not the better team. I get they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. They had Uga as the starting quarterback.
Learn to say it, Blake.
I learned how to pronounce it finally because they said it enough times this weekend throughout a bunch of different TV stations and across Twitter that I finally know.
Well, let's hear it.
It's DJ Uiagalelei.
Yep.
There you go. So no Trevor Lawrence. He's officially going to be out this week at Notre Dame.
He'll be on the sideline, though.
What's up?
He's going to be on the sideline of the game. He's not going to be cleared to play.
He will be cleared. So
that sounds smart.
This one's going to be pretty much, going to you. We'll also talk about some people in the comments as well, their thoughts. Lyle, you're on the board thinking that no matter what, Clemson still is going to win this game. Notre Dame doesn't really have much of a chance. Clemson, they are missing some starters, I think, for this upcoming weekend. It's going to be at Notre Dame. Ian Book's the veteran quarterback. This is Notre Dame's chance to prove to everyone that they're legit. They deserve to be in the playoff talk. If they lose, like you've said in the past, you don't think they can beat them twice. Maybe they can squeak out one win, but should we be concerned with Clemson, guys, with no Trevor Lawrence going into this weekend's game? Or just concerned with them in general if something should happen to Trevor Lawrence? Should he just opt out? Should he get hurt? Should we be concerned with the Clemson Tigers moving forward the rest of the season?
No, I don't think so. In regards to the Notre Dame game, I think I'll leave probably more of that to Lyle, but like Notre Dame's had a pretty good pass defense this season. And like Blake said, like Clemson's going to have some guys out, but to be totally honest with you, I don't see the talent on this team dropping off once Trevor Lawrence and a few of these guys step out for this week's game against Notre Dame, and maybe even the rest of the season, kind of if referencing what Blake was alluding to. Uiagalelei was 30 for 41 for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. Like, I know they struggled a little bit with Boston College. I think they're going to be okay. Again, I'll leave the Notre Dame talk to Lyle for the most part, but we've talked about this 100 times on the show. Like, given these opportunities, Notre Dame struggles to step up to the plate. And I'm not saying that that's the reason why Clemson wins this game, but it's something to consider going in. And I think this is a golden opportunity for Notre Dame, and let's see if they take it. But I'm not worried about Clemson.
No, Clemson will be fine. And here's why. Say hypothetically Notre Dame beats them this weekend without Trevor Lawrence. He'll come back. Clemson will win the rest of their games. They'd play Notre Dame again in the ACC title, probably. And Clemson would run them out of the building. Because, I mean, we know Trevor Lawrence is that good, combined with Notre Dame's inability to win big games, especially big games on the road. In terms of this weekend, I mean, I'll go off of what Josh briefly mentioned last week about how Notre Dame's a good team without a really good quarterback. I mean, that's what you're going to see this weekend. Every time Ian Book has a big game, he just doesn't bring it. I'll tell you what Clemson's game plan is going to look like this weekend. They're going to stack the box. They're going to try to take away Kyron Williams. They're going to make their corners go one-on-one with Notre Dame's receivers, who Notre Dame's receivers haven't exactly been phenomenal this year. After losing Claypool, after losing Komet, after losing Fink, they don't have a whole lot on the outside. They're going to make Ian Book try to beat them over the top, and they're going to make him throw the ball downfield. Usually that doesn't go well. It's just we can reconvene on Tuesday when we do our next show and we see how this game plays out. But that's the truth. And Josh mentioned, everybody wants a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields. I was thinking about it more and more about like if a certain quarterback played under center for Notre Dame, how much better would they be? Obviously, even a guy like Kyle Trask or Sam Howell would be good. Going even further than that, I was trying to think of a better comparison. here's one I thought of. Last year, Anthony Gordon for Wazoo was great. Like, if Anthony Gordon was currently Notre Dame's quarterback, I'm not saying they'd win the national championship, but I think they'd be better than they are with Ian Book right now. Anthony Gordon can throw the ball downfield. He was a good passing quarterback, yes, in a pass-happy offense, but he was really good. For this weekend, and Andrew Koster, he commented, and I'll read one of his comments, and this is something I was going to bring up anyway, about Clemson having a lot of defensive starters out, and that's true, including James Skalski, their middle linebacker. Regardless, I mean, Clemson, like Alabama, like other schools, you lose a starter, you bring in another 5-star, they step up. That's probably how it's going to go. And for this weekend, again, if Notre Dame had a different quarterback, this might be a different story if they had a guy who could throw it downfield better than Ian Book, like an Anthony Gordon or like somebody better than him. The truth is they just don't have that. And for that reason, I don't really think Clemson's going to have an issue this weekend because I'm sure they're going to game plan to make Book throw downfield, and it's probably not going to go that well.
I will say this. Two things. One, Lyle, are you using your microphone tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't. You just use your headphone audio.
Okay.
You keep getting super static, and it's.
Short Round said your audio is killing eardrums across the nation, maybe across the world, Lyle. So actually take that as a compliment. As we lose Josh. Oh, there's Josh.
Anyway.
All Wi-Fi in the house just reset. Sorry.
Yeah, you look crisp now, Josh. You look crisp. I will say this though: the thing with, all right, losing Trevor Lawrence, everyone's like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" You have a 5-star recruit. You have the number 1 quarterback recruit as your backup, now starter. It's kind of like what happened to Alabama a few years ago. It's, all right, Jalen Hurts gets hurt. What are we going to do now? Like, oh no, what's Alabama going to do? In steps Tua. In steps what you saw Tua become throughout his rest of the time starting at Alabama. I do think this is one of the things where no matter how well DJ plays in these next few games, however long Trevor is out, if it's just this one game, this is going to be a little different than Alabama because I think Trevor did not lose this starting job. There were things that happened outside of his control, or, maybe he did control it. Anyways, outside of his control that he couldn't help with. So I think this thing is very similar to what happened in Alabama. Is they're like, what are we going to do? You got the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country coming in, preparing as the starter from day one. Because Trevor Lawrence is going to be here for 1 year and you're going to get the starting job. You know that. So DJ Uiagalelei, Blake, learn to say it.
Uiagalelei.
Not even close.
All right.
Uiagalelei. He steps in, he gets a little bit of time to shine, and this is perfect for him because instead of him playing in garbage time with some of the backups and, having to fend for his own and make more plays, he's able to play with a starting offense, a starting offensive line, starting offensive receivers, starting special teams players, everybody who is a starting player on that team, he's able to play with and gets a sense of a full action college football game instead of just garbage time. One thing I do want to quickly say from this past weekend, though, from the Clemson-Boston College game, it brought us one of the greatest moments from the entire weekend, and that was when Boston College had 4th and 2 and ran a fake field goal with the best moment in college football we've gotten so far this weekend. Joe Tessitore on the call, his son John Tessitore is the holder, runs under center and calls a fake field goal. One of the best moments from college football this year. And Joe Tessitore, an ultimate professional, just going right through it like it's anybody else.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I was going to say, it'd be easier to be more excited, but again, when your son's the holder for a team, but then again, he pulled off an awesome play, so that was still cool to see him being professional on that.
That was an audible actually at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a great game. I'm sure depending on what happens in the game, depending on time, everything, maybe we can get Kostrad next week to talk about, is Clemson done now that they lost to Notre Dame by 20 and Ian Book is the official Heisman favorite? But a lot to keep in mind in regards to that game. All right, guys, enough real Week 9 takeaway action. Let's get to our stars of the week. Brady actually has worked and done a new, easier type of graphic in regards to our stars of the week. Now, before he gets up the graphic, I must say, if you're for whatever reason, if you're standing while watching the show, if you're driving in the car and you're watching the show or listening to the show, pull over, take a seat in your chair, because one of these stars of the week,
Blake should go first.
Personally, my star of the week is going to blow your mind. You're going to think that this is some sort of sick joke. It's not. This is a 100% serious, accurate star of the week that I had to hand out this week. So, Brady, if you have the graphic ready, I can actually get to my star
Hang on,
of
give
the
me 1
week.
second. Let me pull this up. And
if you guys are watching right now on YouTube, leave a comment in the live chat as to who you think is going to be my star. They go, oh, it's too late. Sorry, already there. All right, guys. Where do I begin?
With Bo.
My star of the week is the one, the only, Bo Nix. I talked about this earlier in regards to the Cincinnati game because I had money on it. I also had money on this Auburn LSU game, so I watched essentially every snap. And guys, Bo Nix looked like a really good quarterback. He looked like a good quarterback. If I were to take some person off the street and say they give the Heisman to the best player in college football, I guarantee this person would say, oh, is this Bo Nix guy going to be a Heisman candidate? He looked good, guys. Bo Nix completed 75% of his passes. He threw for 300 yards. Guys, would you guys like to take a guess as to how many times Bo Nix has thrown for 300 yards in his career? Granted, he's played about now.
I know.
Like 16 games. So Brady knows he's out of it. Josh Lyle, he's played, I think, 16, 17 games. How many games do you think he's thrown for 300 yards?
4. I know for sure 1 last year because I believe he threw for 398 once last year, but I'm going to round up and go 4.
I'm just going to say 0.
Well, since he threw for 300, he has 1. Now, officially 3. This was his 3rd time throwing for 300 yards, and his first while having 3 touchdowns. Didn't throw an interception, rushed for 81 yards, the most of his career, had a rushing touchdown, and he averaged 7.4 yards per carry. That's the most he's ever averaged with at least 8 rushing carries. Bo Nix was elite. Granted, this LSU defense is an absolute joke. This LSU defense looks awful. It's abysmal. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. It's a joke, but it's still an SEC defense. And Bo Nix went through him like it was nothing, and he looked good. So Bo Nix, enjoy this while you can. Soak this up. Enjoy being my star of the week because I guarantee you're never going to make this segment again for as long as you play football at Auburn. I guarantee it. But this week, I have to give you props. I have to give you credit. Bo Nix, I am going to, tip my hat off to you, Bo Nix. Who would have thought? Not me. Who wants to go next?
All you, Brady.
Hang on, I'm writing down Blake's guarantee of him saying Bo Nix will never be a star of the week again.
Great.
Go ahead, Josh. Start from the beginning then.
Okay. So this one I kind of went out of the box for. We had talked about Talia Tagovailoa last week, and I think
you mentioned that, Josh.
Huh?
Funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I mean there were a couple of comments in the thing that just popped up, and this is something that I think we talked about in our group chat last week. Went out of the box with this one. Jack Sears, can we get that 4 stars off so we can see those stats? Jack Sears, if you don't know the name, was the 3rd string quarterback at USC in 2018. Stepped in when both JT Daniels and Matt Fink got hurt, and Jack Sears came in and played a pretty good game against Arizona State, which I'll talk about later, but played a good game against Arizona State, ended up losing, and then never played again, decided to transfer. Well, would you believe that he steps in for Hank Bachmeier this past week for Boise State, goes 17 of 20, nearly 300 yards, also had a rushing touchdown to go along with 3 passing touchdowns, and a nice cool QBR of 95. His overall rating was over 200. I mean, it's a weird situation. I really like Jack Sears. I like Bo Nix. I don't think he's ever going to be the star of the week again, but that's more with what's going on with Boise State's quarterback situation. For people that don't know, like Hank Bachmeier's not playing. People don't know why. Somebody on the team got COVID. Don't know who it is. Multiple players didn't travel last week, and we don't know who the quarterback's going to be against BYU. But Jack Sears, for what it's worth, was really good against Air Force last week, and who knows, maybe he plays this week against BYU as one of the reigning Manning Award stars of the week. So we'll see, but Jack Sears, good for you, man. Grad transfer at Boise State.
Yeah, there were a lot of good options this week, and like Connor donated and put in the super chat, I'm trying to make a better habit of reading some of these for the people who listen. Tua's little brother should have been a star of the week. The Big Ten, third Big Ten player to have 350 plus yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns in the same game. led Maryland to the biggest fourth quarter comeback in school history. Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, for his first real big game, he was really good. And against the Minnesota,
he did this also after being awful the week prior. Like he was awful the week prior, and so was Maryland. They came back with this bounce back game.
He was, and I thought Minnesota was going to beat Michigan 2 weeks ago, and I surely thought they were going to beat Maryland last week. But man, all of a sudden, Talia, now all of a sudden people have their eyes on him. He was great, and Minnesota clearly isn't. Anyway, my star of the week is the guy I'm now going to tab the best wide receiver in college football. I don't think that should be that hot of a take at this point, especially with Jamar Chase not playing, especially with Jalen Waddle out for the year. It's this guy. Devontae Smith has games like this. He's good every time he steps on the field, but he has a couple of games a year where he just dominates and takes over football games. He had a 5-touchdown game last year, and this past weekend against Mississippi State, granted, they were a one-game wonder. We know that now. But 11 catches, 203 yards, 4 touchdowns. Mac Jones loves him. I was curious to see how good he was going to be and what type of target share he'd have after Jalen Waddle went out, because now this is his offense in terms of the receiving game. And man, did he step up. I mean, 200 yards. Who could have asked for anything more than that? And then you score 4 touchdowns too. You wondered if this Alabama offense was going to take a dip at all after losing Waddle. It surely doesn't help, but Devontae Smith, the best wide receiver in college football, was there to step up.
I'm going also out of the box on mine, and mine's a homer, and I'm doing it early because, I may not get to talk about it again. I'm giving mine to Tom Allen, IU's head football coach. He's in his, I believe, 3rd full season as the coach. He's 2-0 in the Big Ten, like Blake said earlier, tied with Ohio State for first place in the East. East and West is a weird split for the Big Ten, I have to say. Teams ranked 13th, highest ranking since 1987. You had a 37-21 win last week over Rutgers, who had a good first week, but, shaky after that for Rutgers. But being able to start off 2-0 in the Big Ten after having a major COVID outbreak at the start of workouts. One of their players was hospitalized. We talked about this a few months back, but there were articles written about it, and he had some major heart conditions and ended up being okay out of it. But major props to Tom Allen, the IU football squad, and this is sort of a homer star for me this week because I want to talk about it. I want to throw him in there, and didn't do it after Penn State because I didn't want to jump the gun there, but 2-0. I feel like I'm jumping the gun now to start him against Michigan, but Tom Allen, my star of the week for the Indiana Hoosiers.
There you go. And you got to get him in unranked while you can, because if Indiana just keeps doing this, my goodness, then
one of you guys said in the group chat the other day, I think we're jumping on board the Indiana train for this.
As I said, I think we should adopt Indiana as the new Chattanooga for this year.
I actually
or Coastal Carolina, the shot.
No, it's either IU or Marshall.
I actually think Brady should put Tom Allen as a star of the week for every game that Indiana wins this year while staying undefeated.
I will do that. I will do that as an honorary star of the week.
All right, guys. So those were our stars of the week. Again, Bo Nix, enjoy it while you can. Enjoy it while you can. Guys, we don't have to go too in-depth on this. I just wanted to because it's been about 3 or 4 weeks since we last gave our Heisman odds. You don't have to go in depth on anything. It could just be the 3 guys you have at the top, the 4, the 5. I have 5 in mine, and I just want to hear you guys' kind of 5 through 1, 3 through 1. Or if the season ends today, who you would give the Heisman to. So we don't have to do rotation or anything. It'd just be Josh, who you got in yours, Lyle, who you got in yours, Brady, who you got in yours. Because like I said, it's been a few weeks. I just want to see where we stand at this point of the season.
Mine's chalk, if I'm going to be honest. I don't know. This is in no particular order. I also don't know what the actual odds, the updated odds are. I believe these are the top 5 in the odds, but I could be wrong. Odds to win the Heisman. I've got Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. I'm sold, Blake. You sold me last week. When they played last week, there was no close football games on television, and that game was just starting. So my dad and I were like, hey, you know what? This game isn't being decided by 40 points right now. It's 0-0. They're kicking off. Let's watch the whole thing. In its entirety, both of us were stunned at his arm strength. So Zach Wilson from BYU, Justin Fields, and Kyle Trask are my 5. And I really think that it's kind of obvious to say, hey, maybe Travis Etienne's on the outside, and he's been really good. But where do the numbers rank, at least in terms of national rankings for running backs and stuff? I've always said it's an MVP award. If you take that guy off the team, then it's a different team. And I do think that if you take Travis Etienne off that Clemson offense, it doesn't look the same. So Etienne and Lawrence, I think, are both on that list too.
I have 3 guys that I think actually have a chance. If you want me to throw in Kyle Trask and Zach Wilson at 4 or 5, I will. 3 guys I think that are really in the running this year in order. I've still got Trevor Lawrence at 1, Mac Jones at 2, Justin Fields at 3.
Josh, Travis Etienne's 11th nationally in rushing yards with 606.
All right.
I went with 5. You know, I'm very sold on Mac Jones, but I didn't put him at number 1. 1 through 5, I have Justin Fields at number 1. I kept Trevor Lawrence at number 2 because it didn't do anything negative to impact, his stock as a Heisman candidate and a Heisman winner. He still very well could win the award, even though he missed a game or 2, but it wasn't for injury. It wasn't for poor performance. It was for everything else. I have Mac Jones at 3. I put him there because I think he is a top guy. Zach Wilson, Josh, Blake, you guys said it. He is incredible. He's got incredible arm strength. And a buddy of mine, we were talking about Zach Wilson the other day, and he was like, he is an electric factory, which I felt was the perfect description of Zach Wilson, is electric factory. And then I have Kyle Trask at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, I said this weeks ago, get in on the Zach Wilson hype all you can before everyone else, because I was reading Matt Miller's latest mock draft. He has him going to number 9 now to the Patriots. So Zach Wilson, this is a guy where we've talked about it in weeks past, where you got the 3 guys who I think are guaranteed the top 3, unless Zach Wilson maybe can overtake Trey Lance or something like that. But Zach Wilson, he's established himself as the 4th quarterback in this class. Again, maybe the 3rd, depending on how he does compared to Trey Lance. This is a guy that potentially can be a top 15, top 20 pick. It seems like a lot of teams are going to be taking quarterbacks in the 1st round. It's a pretty good quarterback class, but we tried to tell you guys weeks ago, get in on Zach Wilson, buy stock when you can. I think when I brought up Zach Wilson's name after that 3rd game of the season, he was like still 12th, 13th, 14th in Heisman odds. His odds were fantastic. Now I think he's like in the top 5 or something like that. So Zach Wilson, he's the man. Unfortunately, if BYU had some ranked wins or something like that, he'd be at my number 1, but I don't think he can get there. So I do have Mac Jones at number 1, but I am going to have Zach Wilson at number 2 just because of how good he has been, and who knows how that's going to happen. I got Travis Etienne at 3. He's been the best running back, I think, in the country. I was going to go to Connor's thing about him mentioning Khalil Herbert for Star of the Week, where Khalil Herbert, he's been fantastic in rushing all season. He actually, you can make the case, has been the best running back, but with Virginia Tech, how bad they've been as a team, I can't get him in the top 5. But I just want to let you know, Connor, Khalil Herbert, don't sleep on him. Buy stock now. But Travis Etienne, Andrew had a comment earlier in regards to Etienne. What he's doing in the passing game is remarkable. And I think I said this last week or the week before. Travis Etienne, if he goes to a good situation next year in the NFL, this is going to be a guy that's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in fantasy drafts, because what he's doing in the passing game is remarkable. But I think he's been the most impressive running back in the country. So I got him at number 3. At number 4, I got Justin Fields. And number 5, I have Devontae Smith. Trevor Lawrence, he very well could finish in the top 3, maybe win it. I think not playing in these 2 games can hurt him. His numbers have been not awful, but I just don't think when it's all said and done, he'll have enough. I don't think he's going to have that big time win. He would have needed it this weekend against Notre Dame. So I don't think Trevor Lawrence, again, he could win, but this is what my top 5 at this point would be. So there it is right there. I got Devontae Smith coming in at 5.
If we're just going to go off what we've seen from the games people have played this year, I have Graham Mertz at number 1.
Oh, boy. Oh boy, there it is. There it is right there. So those are our Heisman lists. All right, guys, we get to Blake's bets, and then I'll let Brady get the uniforms loaded for UniWatch coming up next. Blake's bets, guys, a very, very good week this past week, and I went 4-1. And I just want to let you guys know, I went to State Line last week, made a lot of bets, had a very successful week. These are the bets I'm going to be betting this week, and I'm going to State Line of Nevada tomorrow. I'm placing these bets, so I believe in them, so you should too. So 4-1 last week.
Will they count your bet?
What's up?
Will they count your bet?
What's up?
Are they going to count your bet?
Oh, they'll count my bet.
Okay.
If you get it in on time, you'll be fine.
We're 19-13 on the season. These are my 5 bets of the week, guys. First one, ASU, USC. ASU is an 11-point underdog for whatever reason against SC. I love the Sun Devils plus 11. We got some fun ones, guys. Ohio State, I got the minus 38 against Rutgers. Oklahoma, I got the minus 38 against Kansas. Marshall minus 45 against UMass. The over-under this game is 55, and Marshall is projected to win by 45. You can do the math of how many points they're projecting UMass to score. They're awful.
10.
And I have 6 this week because there's some of the ones I like. I like Florida +3 against Georgia, and this one. Sorry, well, again with the sorry, Brady, but I love Michigan -3 against Indiana. So we got 6 bets this week, and all those ones I will be personally betting myself tomorrow. So those are my bets of the week. Let me add the graphic right now. But it is time now to get to UniWatch before we get to our Pac-12 preview. Guys, every week we pick our favorite uniform from the past weekend, and we just share it with you guys. If there's any uniforms you thought were fantastic this weekend, drop a comment down below and let us know what your favorite uniforms were. So Brady, get that PowerPoint loaded up, and we'll share our favorite uniforms from this past week into college football.
Nope, hang on.
All good.
Hang on. Good. I'm running 2 screens now, so it's messing it all up.
All good.
I think I got to figure it out. Haha, cool.
All right, here we go.
All right, I went with Oklahoma State for the UniWatch this week. I like their uniforms in general. Every combination they have, I think, is good. Love the textures on the jerseys, and then they rolled out the all black with the matte finish helmets. Fantastic. There's nothing wrong with them, except for the fact that they played the way they did against Texas and blew the game at the end.
I forgot I'm on a slideshow.
All right. Fan poll this week. Colorado State, Florida Atlantic, BYU, and always other where people can comment. In the comments, somebody put Boise State, somebody put Florida. Those were both good. I thought one of you guys was going to do Boise State, but maybe you changed, so I left that one out.
I said Boise State's for this upcoming week.
Brady's already claimed it.
Okay.
I don't actually. I'm changing it.
So by your pick, by the fans' pick over on our Twitter, Colorado State won Jersey of the Week. These were nice. I mean, I didn't watch Colorado State play this weekend, but when I saw a picture of these uniforms, the white, the green Rams on the side of the helmets, I mean, these are some pretty nice jerseys.
Big fan of those. I think they do a great job with those. Blake, drop that. Actually, never mind. You don't have to. All right. Anyways.
Is it this comment right here, Brady?
Well, I was going to say for next week, big shout out to the Hoosiers for rocking these this week in a national TV game, a ranked matchup against Michigan. I don't know why you're going to be wearing camo jerseys, but go classic. But I get what you're doing, and I'm glad they're doing it. Anyways, my pick, nice, whoever just did that. My pick this week was Texas Tech. Simple, all black, top to bottom. The one thing that I noticed that I really like about this jersey is on the shoulders, you have opposite colored stripes. So looking at it left to right, but on the jersey, the right shoulder has the red stripe on front and the left has the white. But if you look at it from the side, it's split white and red and white. So super clean, super crisp. I think Texas Tech always does a great job with their uniforms. They have one of the best color combinations to work with in the country too. And they had sort of like a metallic red stripe down the middle of their helmet. You can't really see it in this photo, but a metallic red. So I'm giving mine to Texas Tech this week.
I like it. I'm going to go with Arkansas State in this one. Their jerseys are kind of like when ASU wears their black ones, where it's this interesting looking texture that I absolutely like. I think it's fantastic. The white helmet, anytime you do white on black, I think it's clean. I like the, I guess, a silver black, whatever their logo is. It's tough to really tell. Looks like we got some both going there. And these numbers are kind of like silvery white. Simple, but they're clean. I like them. Arkansas State. Well done. I mean, these are really nice. Well done.
Really good.
Really good. Looking at some other ones here in the comments. Connor said Louisville went all black versus Virginia Tech, and they were sweet. I just Googled it. They were pretty nice. They had like the all black helmets. Those were definitely nice. So yeah, UniWatch. Those are our favorites from this past weekend. But guys, are we ready to talk some Pac-12 football for the next 15, 20 minutes?
Been ready to talk Pac-12 football since July.
All right, guys, so we got our Pac-12 preview right now. Again, we'll probably spend 15, 20 minutes on this. Then we'll get to a few Q&A questions, then get to our pick'ems. But the Pac-12, guys, I guess we'll be starting with this in regards to who's going to be competing in the Pac-12. I think we can all agree it's probably going to be the same teams. Oregon, they're probably the best bet to make any sort of push and probably the favorite to at least make the Pac-12 title game. We got USC. I think it's only Oregon and USC that are even ranked to start the season in the Pac-12. You got ASU, they're going to be a contender. Utah, they're always there. After that, I mean, you can make the case that Washington, they might be back, but they're not playing this weekend. They've been kind of disappointing the previous years. Oregon State's looked really good over the last year or two. They've been improving. Cal, a lot of people are high on Cal, but I think the 4 teams I mentioned initially, do we all are kind of a consensus agreement that those are going to be the 4 teams that are going to be competing in the Pac-12 this upcoming year?
Yeah, if you want to even do 4.
Yeah,
I think that's what we said on a show a couple weeks ago. We had a Q&A question saying who's going to compete, and I think we all had those 4.
All right, guys, I'll throw it to you then. In regards to the Pac-12, let's start with Oregon. Let's start with the Ducks. So I think officially Penei Sewell, he didn't opt back in.
No,
so
he did not.
He's officially gone. The best, best offensive tackle prospect probably in a decade. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what people think of comparing him to Quentin Nelson, who's been fairly good so far with the Colts. But a lot of people think he's better than Quentin Nelson, which is saying a lot. Have they officially named? I mean, I would assume so. I just haven't seen. But have they officially named their starting quarterback yet? Because I know it was kind of a battle early on and during the summer. But have they officially named it?
Well, it's supposed to be Tyler Show.
Okay, I figured as much, but I didn't know if it was going to go to the Boston College transfer.
Yeah, and Show was a good prospect. It could go to the BC transfer. I would assume. I'm
blanking on his name. That's why he's the BC
Give me a second,
transfer.
I got it for you.
It's Anthony Brown.
Okay.
Oh, that's yeah, that's right.
So in the 2 deep depth chart released by Oregon for this week's game, it says Tyler Show or Anthony Brown. They haven't named an official starting quarterback yet.
Okay.
I'm not at practice, as none of us are, but I would guess that Tyler Show is probably going to be the starting quarterback. And what I'm expecting is that he's going to step in and have he's going to have a similar impact to Mac Jones. His numbers aren't going to be that good. I don't think he's going to be as good as Mac Jones, so let's pump the brakes right there. But I think he's going to step in and be like that. I think at face value, you're thinking they're losing Justin Herbert to the draft to the LA Chargers, and oh no, what are they going to do at quarterback? There we go. Tyler Show's supposed to be pretty good. So I'm not on the whole, oh no, what are they going to do at quarterback train yet? Let's let Tyler Show play some football games. My biggest concern for Oregon is the guys who opted out. Penei Sewell is irreplaceable. I mean, that's not a dig at who's playing behind him. That's a praise for Penei Sewell being the best offensive lineman prospect we've seen in 10, 20 years. He is not somebody that I think you can just slide somebody else in and replace. Somebody else might be good. Penei Sewell is unreal on the offensive line. So my problem with Oregon goes beyond him. Javon Holland, Thomas Graham, Brady Breeze. They are going to be without 3 of their 4 starting defensive backs because they all opted out of the season and have yet to opt back in. So keep an eye on that. With that being said, I think Oregon has, if they're not the most talented team in the Pac-12 from a depth perspective, they are top 2 or 3. They recruit well. They're very talented. They're very athletic, and I think they're going to be the team to beat in the Pac-12. I think they're easy to project to go 6-0, but we'll see. I mean, college football is crazy, but on paper they should go 6-0.
Short Run just brought this up in the comment, and I just ran a check on this. It's actually pronounced Shuck, Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, which I never knew. I don't know where the Shuck comes in.
Yeah,
but there you go.
It's on the Oregon media guide. It says Shuck, SHUCK as the pronunciation.
Oh, shucks. Pocket that for when he throws a pick, and you guys can. You don't even have to say it was from me. Just
love it.
Throw that out there.
Quickly, I loaded up Oregon's schedule. My goodness. So Stanford, Washington State, UCLA, Oregon State, Cal, Washington. I don't think any of those 6 teams are going to be ranked this year. So Oregon, you likely should have a cakewalk to the Pac-12 title game.
If you look at the Pac-12 schedule, like you just said, so Stanford should be an easy win this week. Washington win, UCLA win, Oregon State win. Cal and UW are the toss-ups. It depends, obviously, how those 2 teams are doing at the end of the season. It also depends if Cal's going to bounce back and get their COVID cases under control. Obviously, we heard that right before we went on the air today, was that Cal and UW has had their game on Saturday be canceled. Yeah. But if you pull up that brick that just has all the tiles of the full Pac-12 schedule, take notice of the teams that, I mean, we'll get to USC, but like there are 2 teams that I think we can all agree are the 2 teams to beat in the Pac-12 on paper, and it's Oregon and USC. And every team in the conference is playing one out of division team, right? Oregon draws UCLA. USC draws Washington State. I think that helps both of those teams get a clearer path to being 6-0 when the time for the Pac-12 championship comes around, assuming those two teams are in it, because Washington State is probably going to be the number 5 or 6 team in that division, and UCLA is going to be 5 or 6 in the Pac-12 South. So I think it definitely helps those two teams.
Blake, are we doing a players to watch out for segment part of this as well?
We can, yeah. I mean, I didn't include it like in the rundown, but we can have.
I mean, we got a lot of time running already, so unless you just want to, my guy's Oregon, anyways. Listen, Lyle, I'm sorry if I just totally jumped in front of you.
You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's one guy. Obviously, everyone's talking about in Oregon. That's Sewell. Everyone's talking about Sewell. Sewell. I'm also going to talk about Sewell, but not Penei Sewell. His younger brother is a freshman this year, who's going to be one of the 2 starting middle linebackers, Noah Sewell, a 5-star recruit, was the 13th ranked recruit overall by Rivals. He was Mr. Football in Utah, 6'3", 250. He had like 800 something career tackles, not actually 800, but he had a very large amount of career tackles throughout his time at high school, and is going to be plugged into this Oregon defense immediately. And so I'm watching out for a guy. Obviously, there are so many other players in the Pac-12 that we know about already. This is going to be one of those guys to keep an eye on for sure, because pair him with a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, who's one of the most electric defensive players in the country. I think Noah Sewell can make his way up and be one of the top linebackers in all of college football.
Yeah, there's no doubt Oregon's going to be really good. And if we're going to stick on Tyler Shuck, which thanks, Brady, because I thought it was show all this time. If we're going to stick on Shuck, I honestly think his transition is going to be pretty smooth. So Oregon's offense, number one, is very, very QB friendly, and it's pretty easy for QBs to run. A lot of it's horizontal. So for a guy that hasn't had a whole lot of experience, that should make his job a lot easier. They also, like Josh said, regard him very highly. The Washington Post article I read a couple days ago said he's supposed to be the starter. So I'm going to assume it's going to be him. And I think he's going to kind of impact that team sort of how Jaden Daniels impacted ASU. I expect Tyler Shuck to be that good and put up numbers that quickly. Especially with all the talent he has around him. Because, a couple of the concerns for Oregon is, you lose Penei Sewell up front. Also, because their DBs were supposed to be so good coming into this year, but you lose Javon Holland and you lose Brady Breeze. Javon Holland's probably going to be a first rounder. That hurts. They also have a lot of offensive weapons coming back, not named Penei Sewell. You have CJ Verdell, who's arguably the best running back in the Pac-12, and you have Johnny Johnson coming back at wide receiver. I think Shuck is going to have a pretty easy transition into being the starting quarterback of this team, not just because it's a simple offense to run, but also because he has all the weapons to succeed. I think he's going to be very good, and I think he's going to learn pretty quickly, and that's why I think Oregon's the best team in this conference. I don't think they're as good as what they could have been if players hadn't opted out. Mm-hmm. But when it's all said and done, I think this Oregon team is still really, really good.
I will say this very quickly. I found Sewell's stats from high school. He finished his 4-year career with 224 tackles, 29 tackle for loss, 8.5 sacks, 5 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles. Oh, he also played offense and rushed for 2,316 yards, 40 touchdowns on 263 carries, and he passed for over 100 yards twice in his career. So he's just a freak athlete all across the board.
Yeah, I had to look up CJ Verdell because I couldn't remember if he opted out, but I guess he's still going to be there, which is great for Oregon because I was under the impression that he was one that opted out. I could be wrong.
Travis Dye right behind him too.
Yeah, I could be wrong, guys, but it could be when I was researching stuff. Did anyone even mention Kayvon Thibodeau and all this in regards to Oregon? Oh, did Brady?
Brady did.
Yeah,
I was gonna save that for my Pac-12 defensive player.
I mean, we talked about this during our shows, I think last year. How if it wasn't for Trevor Lawrence, now granted, depending on who gets the number 1 overall pick, it still very well could be Penei Sewell who goes number 1 in the draft. Kayvon Thibodeau, again, depending on how quarterbacks are looking next year, he could be easily the number 1 pick in the draft. So Oregon, it does suck that they had some key players opt out, but I think we can all agree again, this is Oregon's conference to lose. They have a fairly easy schedule. They should not lose any of those games. And even if they play in SC or Arizona State in the Pac-12 title game, they should be the favorite in that game. So Oregon with Shuck, at the helm, a quarterback, which I'm still shocked by because, I have never heard that. But I think it is Oregon's conference to lose, but they're the favorite in the North. Let's go over now to, I think we can agree, is the favorite in the South. And that is the Arizona Wildcats. No, not favorite to lose and go winless this year. Probably, I don't have the odds in front of me, but my guess would be it's going to be USC and then maybe ASU too. But USC, Josh, we are at 5:15 now, so we do have to unfortunately keep this a little shorter than we'd like to normally. But SC, as our USC expert, hopefully our man Samuel is still watching from earlier in the show. What is going to be the key? What is going to be the number one factor in regards to SC? Hopefully going 6-0 and reaching the Pac-12 title by going 6-0.
I think this is the best team USC's had on paper since that 2016, maybe 2017 teams under Helton with Sam Darnold at quarterback. Unlike Oregon, they only have one major opt-out, and it's Jay Tufele, who's a starting defensive lineman. They lost their leading tackler on defense, but they're returning 7 of their top 8 tacklers and 8 or 9 defensive starters. They're returning almost everybody on offense minus Austin Jackson and Mike Pittman. But when you lose a guy like Mike Pittman, what do you replace him with? You replace him with Brew McCoy and Kyle Ford to go along with Tyler Vaughns, Drake London, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who arguably is, without looking at any other team in the conference, those 3 alone, without Brew McCoy and Kyle Ford, are the best group of wide receivers in the Pac-12. And you could argue, without Jalen Waddle, I think it's an easier argument. That's a top 5 group of wide receivers in the country with just those 3. And then you add in Brew McCoy and you add in Kyle Ford. I think SC is the team to beat in the South, and a lot of that comes through the offense with Graham Harrell as the offensive coordinator, a lot more weapons. Keaton Slovis is the starting quarterback. I think Keaton Slovis, by the end of the season, is probably the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. I think it's going to be either him or Jaden Daniels. And a lot of people are saying that Keaton Slovis is going to be a top 10 pick in 2021 or 2022. So we'll see.
Going 10, yeah.
Yeah, so
Walter football, but still.
We'll see. He still has a long way to go until he gets to that point because, Trevor Lawrence was a guy that as a freshman or a sophomore, we were saying this is going to be the number 1 pick in 2 years. For me, I see Keaton Slovis as a college football quarterback right now. And that's not a knock on him. That's just where I see him. He needs to grow a lot more before he becomes a potential top 10 pick. But that's how good this USC offense is going to. Jury's out on the defense. New defensive coordinator, Todd Orlando, coming in from Texas. I think they're going to be a really good team. If there's one game on paper that they have a really good chance of losing, it's this week against ASU. But we can get into that later. Realistically, USC goes 6-0 and loses to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship.
Blake, briefly, the top 4 highest odds to win the Pac-12. Oregon's plus 150, USC's plus 200, UW is plus 600, and ASU, Cal, and Utah are tied at plus 900.
Interesting on Washington because I wasn't expecting them to be.
It's probably been updated recently, but this is numbers from a month ago.
Okay, interesting to see. But I think Josh hit everything perfectly about SC. Offensively, just those wide receivers you throw in with Keaton Slovis, my goodness, I'm kind of a bum that we don't have college football fantasy this year, guys, because Keaton Slovis or any one of those wide receivers, because that's the thing about, we talked about this in the past because I made a video on Brew McCoy. This was a former 5-star who we think had COVID last year before COVID was even a thing in the country. And now it's kind of like a free agent. You're just adding a free agent who's, really good that didn't really get a chance to settle in last year. So he could be a sleepy pick, in regards to the Pac-12 being a difference maker. Cause this is a guy where I'll just say, go watch my Brew McCoy video. I'm not going to share anything else because there's a lot of info on him and he could be a really good player for SC.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big difference makers is you lose a guy like Pittman. And again, here's a phrase that I've used a couple times. The jury's still out on Brew McCoy and Kyle Ford because we haven't seen them in action. But these are 2 top recruits nationally that are stepping in to replace a guy like Mike Pittman, who was instrumental in USC's offense the last 3 years. And these are the guys that you're going to replace him with. I think that bodes really well for SC's offense under Graham Harrell.
Yeah, and those are just the freshmen and the young guys. The guys that are going to be there already on the front line. You talk about a guy like Tyler Vaughns, who's been nothing but a model of consistency for that team every year he's played. The lowest catch number he's had in 3 years is 57 as a freshman. Then he had 58 as a sophomore, Last year he had 74 for over 900 yards. All that guy does is catch passes. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't know where his stock is right now. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes toward the end of the first round, to be honest, at the end of this season. Like, USC's receiving core is really, really good. Keaton Slovis is really, really good. I mean, I'm trying to find other phrases to use here. But, yeah, I mean, look, when Slovis stepped in last year, nobody knew. He was a 3-star out of Arizona. Everybody expected Daniels to be the guy. He was unreal. And I think he's only going to continue to do that. I think he's for sure going to be a first-round pick come 22. And we'll see how he looks throughout this 6-game slate this year. But this USC offense is what's going to drive them, and they have all the pieces in the world to make a run. Yeah,
and I want to add on to that real quick, Brady. I think SC got a lot of flack with their recruiting class of last year. But if you look at what USC needed, it wasn't more wide receivers. It wasn't a running back. It wasn't a quarterback. What USC added this past year was beefy 3-star offensive linemen. And everyone's like, what are you adding 3-star guys for? They need a more consistent offensive line. So USC added a bunch of really big offensive linemen to fill in some gaps, and they lost Austin Jackson in the first round to the Miami Dolphins, and they're then replacing him with a recruiting class that is very underwhelming, but is probably going to make a big difference in this program, because then you look at last year and you look at next year, and all those other holes are being filled. So I know that Clay Helton's got a lot of hate for that, but I don't really think that that's necessarily warranted at this point.
I thought you were going to say a creative content recruiting team.
That's true.
They added two, which was
forget about Todd Orlando. Forget about the recruiting class. Forget about any hires they made. The biggest addition to USC was adding the 2 LSU video guys that produced all those big time hype videos last year.
Blake, speaking of the ASU USC game, what was your bet you were going to do? Your Blake's bet for this one? Did you have one?
ASU plus 11.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it now on one of these sites, is 61% of the bets are on ASU with the spread.
Yeah.
So I really like that bet going back to it. But for this game, it's going to be so much fun. I know we're going to talk about it probably more in depth when we get to our pick'ems, but the USC squad, I texted Josh earlier. I'm like, hey, did they lose anything on defense? They're like, they didn't lose anything across the board. They lost Mike Pittman, an offensive lineman. And other than that, you're pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, no, they had, I can't remember what's his name on the defensive line. He opted out, but then he opted back in. So, he opted back in. So he was going to be like their lone piece on defense that they lost, but he decided once the Pac-12 was back, he was going to opt back in. So SC, they're returning essentially everyone on defense. Their offense is going to be high power, high offense. And again, we all expect SC to be the team that comes out of the South. But let's talk about another team in the South, guys. Let's stay on the topic of this weekend's game. ASU, this is probably, again, who everyone thinks will be the team that's going to be competing the most with USC in the South. They returned Jaden Daniels. For the most part, they did lose Brandon Ayuk. They lost a few other pieces, but for the most part, this is an ASU team that's returning a lot of good pieces. Jack Jones is still back, wearing number 0 in the hype video. You love to see it. And this is a team, I don't know where I saw this the other day, if it was on Twitter, if it was on Facebook, but ASU is like one of the youngest teams in the entire country for this upcoming college football season. They have that many underclassmen, and they're projected to be one of the perennial favorites in the Pac-12. So, guys, the Sun Devils, what are our, non-biased, considering we're all four of us now, all 4 of us are ASU graduates. What are our thoughts?
It's in the mail, baby. That
really quickly
in the mail.
I have this right in front of me, Blake. ASU's 30 combined starts among the offensive line are the 6th fewest in the country. The Sun Devils will have the 7th youngest team in the nation in terms of underclass percentage, with 68.1% of the roster, with 77 total underclassmen, 49 freshmen, 28 sophomores on a roster of 113.
Yeah, that's... Again, this is a team that very well could win the Pac-12, and they're the 7th youngest team in the country. What's going to happen, next year when these guys start to develop? So ASU, get on the Herm train while you guys can, because they might not win the Pac-12 this year, but moving forward, this is a team to keep 9, especially this year with Jaden Daniels. So I think we're all going to immediately want to start with there.
This year, I think next year ASU is scary. But you're right. Like, they're very young, but they're very talented. So the inexperience is there for a lot of the guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But we spent 4 years at ASU. The first three watching a really, really bad defense. Last year was reliable and was pretty good in the Pac-12. This year's ASU defense, I think, is going to be really good. You're returning all of your defensive backs for the most part. You're returning 8 defensive starters, and then you're just reloading. I think this is an ASU defense that's going to be towards the top in the Pac-12, or at least should be on paper. But again, we don't really know. But you're right, Blake. When it comes down to ASU, you talk about Herm Edwards and talk about Jaden Daniels in the same sentence. And what does Jaden Daniels have this year? But a progressive and aggressive brand new offensive coordinator in Zach Hill, who came over from Boise State. This is terrifying for the Pac-12 because no disrespect to what ASU was doing before, but the offense was boring with N'Keal Harry and with Brandon Ayuk and with Benjamin
Wilkins.
And Manny Wilkins.
Happy birthday, Manny Wilkins.
Happy birthday, Manny Wilkins. The ASU offense was boring. And now you get an explosive play caller like Zach Hill and weapons like the recruiting class that they're bringing in, a lot of really good receivers, a deep ball guy like Brandon Ayuk and Jaden Daniels slinging the football around. Is an offense that could potentially be very lethal in the Pac-12.
Especially talking about a coach as well, Prentice Gill, coming over from USC.
Yeah.
It was a big
I gotta say it. Let Jaden cook. And that's what this new offense is gonna do. That's what I mean with Zach Hill, who you guys were referring to, who was at Boise State before coming over to ASU to be the offensive coordinator. That's the offense he's basically going to implement. It's going to be very pass happy. It's going to be very modern. And I think that's really good for a guy like Jaden Daniels, who we know is phenomenal. Like, and he might not be a household name yet, but for a guy who in his freshman year did what he did and progressed the way he progressed among the course of a 12 game season there's a reason people are excited about ASU. And I think there's a good balance of some experience on both sides of the ball combined with young, exciting talent. Obviously, a guy like Jaden Daniels has a year of experience. Or then on the defensive side of the ball, you have Chase Lucas and you have Jack Jones as your 2 corners. But then there's a lot of guys that are coming in that are young, that are inexperienced, but people think are going to be really good. You look at the wide receiving core. I mean, they're not going to be as good as USC's. They're not quite as highly regarded as guys like Brew McCoy. But you have a guy like Johnny Wilson coming in, who that guy, like he's the size of a tight end, and he's going to play wide receiver.
He's expected to be the starting Z receiver listed on the roster. He's 6'7", 220.
Yeah, and he's their highest recruit, if I'm not mistaken, from 2020. You have him. For those who don't know, Chad Johnson's kid is on this team, Chad Johnson Jr., and he's going to be somewhere in the mix.
That's his son?
Yeah.
That's his father?
Well, I guess once I gave the name away.
I thought we had Ocho Cinco's son.
He's not on the starting 2 deep.
Ocho Cinco Jr. He also changed the name.
Yes.
No, so maybe he won't make an impact right away, but I mean, he's one of those guys who was still a good recruit and people expect at some point to have an impact. But that's like to the point you guys were making where this team is going to be good this year. They're 1 year away. I mean, I think they're going to be good, and then next year they're going to be close to favorites in the Pac-12. But yeah, I mean, back to the Zach Hill point, I think this offense is going to look way different than it has in years past. I think you're going to see the playbook opened up. You're going to see Daniels throwing downfield a lot. And I think you're going to see skill players make plays despite a young roster.
Not to mention, Lyle, another guy, LV Bunkley Shelton, who is a freshman receiver. He's 5'11", 190. So right there, just size-wise, you fill the spot you lost of Brandon Ayuk with LV. You fill the spot you lost a few years ago with N'Keal, with a guy like Johnny Wilson, and you have a returning Frank Darby, who is one of the most energetic, fun guys to be around off the field, like in the locker room, whatever. Jaden Daniels, he was a freshman last year. He's a captain this year. Ethan Long, the elite player that is Ethan Long. I'm excited to see how Zach Hill utilizes him. Hopefully it's not as much as Sean Payton and Taysom Hill, but we'll see. But one of the big things we have to look at for this ASU team is
don't worry, Brady. I already got it ready for you. I know where you were going with that. I knew exactly where you were going. I was
actually going to bring up Michael Turk, who is the first player ever to receive a waiver coming back from the combine after not getting drafted. So
I still don't understand. But
I don't either. Props to you.
He's such a great human being. He somehow convinced them he needs to be back.
Nailed it. So one thing that I will say about this ASU team is that it's a very young team on the offensive side of the ball. A couple offensive linemen still around. Cade Coate, Donovan West, they were some really good players last year. But the defensive side of the ball, we see Jack Jones, Ashari Crosswell, Evan Fields, 2 great safeties. But the defensive line and front 7 for ASU is returning almost everybody. Merlin Robertson, your middle linebacker, and Darian Butler, your middle linebacker. All right, those are 2 great players right there. Josh, I know we
saw starters. They're going to be this is going to be the 3rd year starting since they were freshmen, and that's how a lot of this team is.
Same with Jermaine Lolay and a guy like DJ Davidson. So those are some guys who are really good players up front. They're going to be underappreciated in the Pac-12. But the one thing I printed out notes today. Like I went all paper notes today. I went paper notes today because I prepped because I found this stat and it was amazing. I didn't want to lose it. This is the one thing I am concerned about with ASU all year. Last year, in the last few years, we saw the great running game of Eno Benjamin. A few years before that, we had Kalen Balazs, Demario Richard. They were a 2-headed thing. ASU lost a couple of their running backs, transfers to the draft. Listen to this stat, and this blew my mind. The Sun Devils will be the only team in the country with a travel roster that features 0 starts or carries at the Division I level among the running backs to start the season. So their running back room is, when I say literally inexperienced, they have not one combined snap or they have not one combined carry at the running back position. And that's going to be something that's going to be scary to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, because you got a junior college transfer in Rashad White, but then you've got the guy everybody's excited about in Trainum, who's from Ohio. He's a freshman who obviously doesn't have any experience yet.
And as well, too. So you have a deep running back room, but you have a lot of inexperience. So we can see a lot of rotation there.
So that's where I think that obviously we talk about they're a year away, but there's some experience elsewhere that I think will help these young guys. I mean, you talked about Frank Darby in the receiving group. You have a lot of young receivers. Then you have a guy like Frank Darby who's been there forever. You're right. The running back is the one position where we'll see how that plays out through the course of the season. But again, if this offense is going to be more pass happy and it's going to be less running back dependent than it was under Rob Likens, who was the old OC, I think that takes some pressure off of them too.
The one thing I'm also excited for is in years past, ASU's had the guy where it's, hey, this is N'Keal Harry's year to be the receiver. He's getting every ball. And then last year it's, hey, this is Brandon Ayuk's year to be the receiver. He's getting every ball. But Frank Darby's been around all of this. He's been a guy that's just been consistent throughout all of it. It's going to be his year to get the ball. But this is the first time they've had what I think a complete wide receiver room that is loaded. There was one point where it was N'Keal, it was Darby, and it was Brandon Ayuk. But the other 2 didn't have the chance to experience the stardom that they've had so far, or that they've had in recent past.
Yeah, so it's going to be a fun year for ASU. It's going to be a fun year in Tempe. And the one thing I just want to say before we move on to a few other notable things, and then we'll wrap up the show, is the fact that they have this waiver, whatever it is this year, where essentially if you play, you're still granted that extra year of eligibility. I mean, for the most part, who knows how many of these ASU guys, I'm sure Jaden, I'm sure some of the other ones, they're probably going to be draft-type guys in the coming years. But for the most part, looking at this now, if all these guys use this extra year they're given to stay at ASU for another year, this could be the next 3, 4, 5 years at ASU.
Michael Turk will never leave.
Michael Turk will always, I was going to say with Frank Darby, he's guaranteed another year, especially with this if he opts to stay, unless he's going to continue the train of first-round wide receiver NFL draft picks at ASU. Guys, before we move on, Kevin, I have finally returned. So our man Kevin is officially back. Respect to the Aztecs. Respect to the Aztecs in regards to that. At least they're better in basketball. Guys, a few things I just want to quickly bring up in regards to the Pac-12, some other notables. Utah, they lose Zach Moss. I'm looking at their depth chart right now. They got Drew Lisk as their starting quarterback. Utah, they're in this conversation every year. They're always up there. Do you guys think that Utah is going to be another one of those teams where, again, they're competing for the Pac-12 this year? Or do you think some of the players they've lost on offense and defense might hurt them in 2020?
I think it's going to hurt them personally. They did lose a lot. I think the success of this team overall is going to come down to whatever the offense can do, and part of that's going to be on the quarterback. And Blake, you said that it's who is the starting quarterback? Because earlier I didn't think they had named one, but
I just exited out. I thought it was going to be Jake Bentley, who transferred from South Carolina, but according to
listen to this tree right now, it says Drew Lisk Jr., Jake Bentley, or Cameron Rising or Rissing.
Okay, because
Jake Bentley with 33 starts, Drew Lisk was 6, and Cameron was 0.
Okay, so something I saw earlier said something about Bentley versus Rising. It just depends on what the overall quality of the quarterback play is going to be. For me, it's a team that's probably going to have a good defense. They're always very good defensively. They're always very good in the trenches. So what is the quarterback going to do this year to have success? What are they going to do to move the ball and put points on the board? That's the X factor for me for the Utes this season.
I think the one big loss that Utah had is a guy on their defense, Julian Blackman. He was their safety. He was a big piece of that defense. A lot of times you don't see, a safety being the focal point of your defense. He was a third round pick, and he's playing great in the NFL so far. He was top defensive rookie rating, whatever, a couple times the last few weeks. But he was one of those guys on that Utah defense that, Utah is always one of those teams that's in the middle of the pack every year. They're always in the fight. They're always around. So I think losing a good defensive player, secondary player like Blackman is going to be big for them as well, especially in a West Coast style conference that is a Pac-12 that likes to air it out.
Well, and they lost Jalen Johnson. So that's 2 star defensive backs that team lost, because Jalen Johnson was also a really high pick.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
second round, I think.
Utah, let's see if I can find the comment, because this is perfect. Utah's just going to be that pest team that gives opponents headaches with their defense, which they do every year. Their offense is never the best. It's their defense that really gets them going. Some other ones I want to mention, guys. Cal. This is going to be tough for Cal because a lot of people were high on Cal. They thought they potentially could be a sleeper in the North. They're not going to have their game this week against Washington, meaning they only have 5 regular season games. I don't think they would have taken down Oregon anyway, but now with the 5-game season, who knows? I forget. There was some random stat last year. I forget what it was, but it was like when Chase Garbers was the starting quarterback, they were like either undefeated or they were like 7-8-1, something like that. So when Chase Garbers starts, Cal was a good team. And last year, Cal, they kind of just came really out of nowhere. They did finish the season 8-5. They were ranked, I think, like 16 or 15 when ASU went on the road and took them down. They really exceeded expectations because just a few years ago, Cal was just kind of just one of those Pac-12 teams. You beat them, you move on, but they're looking good. Chase Garbers a really underrated quarterback, especially in the Pac-12. I don't have like their depth chart loaded in front of me, so I'm not exactly certain how good they are compared to last year, how much talent they brought back. I'm drawing a blank on their linebacker from last year. Yeah, who had like 180 tackles or something.
Unreal.
Consensus first team
Nobody
All-American.
on the East Coast knew who he was, which was a crime.
Consensus first team All-American, all Pac-12 first team, like I think 2 or 3 years, and was drafted in the 6th round.
So they do lose him, who literally was averaging like 15, 16 tackles a game. But again, for the most part, Cal, Chase Garbers, he's going to be their guy. We saw him last year. He's a good quarterback. But do you think that Chase Garbers, again, this is an 8-5 team last year. I don't really see them improving a whole lot. Do you think they can make any noise potentially to maybe upset Oregon and make a run at the North?
Really quick, Evan Weaver had 103 tackles this last year.
So I think those must have been solo tackles because he definitely had
103 solos.
Yeah.
180
crazy.
total.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Chase, there were 2 games that were letdowns for him when he was the starting quarterback, and they were against ASU and against USC, and he got hurt in the 3rd quarter in both games, or the 2nd quarter in both games. Other than those 2 games, as a starting quarterback, he was really good, and the team struggled when he was out. And not just offensively, but as a whole, because I just don't think they were that good last year. They were competitive for a while, started out 4-0 or whatever it was, and then lost to ASU, and Garbers got hurt, and then they were not very good until he came back, and in his first game back, he got hurt against USC. And I think that Cal's going to be a competitive team, but again, now there are the off-field issues that need to be sorted out for Cal. And what's a little bit scary is, like, for ASU, for example, this game against USC, week 1 of the season for ASU, is now a must-win game, because what if you don't play against Cal next week?
Yeah.
And what if you start 0-1 and then don't play next week against Cal, and suddenly there's 2 weeks down, you're below 500, and you just lost out on a very crucial 6th game potentially in a shortened Pac-12 season. So that's the issue for other teams right now. But for Cal, I think on the field they'll be okay, but they'll be competitive, kind of like how they've been in the past, but I don't see them beating Oregon.
Do you guys have any parting Pac-12 thoughts? I mean, Washington, as Brady said, they're one of the favorites, I guess, in the Pac-12. Oregon State, they've been the laughingstock for years. They're probably going to improve on their season last year. They were one win away from going bowling. The Pac-12 South, I mean, UCLA, Colorado, Arizona, yeah, non-existent, not going to be competitive. Any parting Pac-12 thoughts, takes, anything you guys want to mention before we move to our pick'ems?
Pac-12 after brunch, baby.
It'll be interesting for sure.
I hate to do this and even bring up that school from down south, but I've seen a couple people commenting about him in the comment section. Zach Saylor had a few about him, and it was about Grant Gunnell, who's Arizona's quarterback. I hate to do it, but facts are facts, and this guy coming out of high school was like one of the best Texas high school quarterbacks ever. He broke records on records on records in the state of Texas. And last year, him and Khalil Tate did this weird thing where they'd flip in and out of certain games, and they never really had one guy playing consistently. Now it's his job, and a lot of people think he has a chance to be really good. So if you want one sleeper quarterback, you were talking about Garbers, that might be one to watch.
Is Sports Illustrated going to put him on the cover and be like, this is the next
Heisman? Yeah.
I hope not.
Yeah, and he that's the thing with Arizona is, and Lyle and I called this game last year, and literally every time ASU punted and we would go to commercial break, the binoculars are out to see which quarterback's in the huddle, because it would be different every time. Now that it's his job, I think he takes that job and runs away with it for sure, and I think he has a good season. As a whole, I don't think U of A's got it.
Agreed.
All right, guys. I like that Lyle brought that up. But yeah, whatever they were doing last year with the quarterbacks, that was absolutely weird. So it's time now. I guess final Pac-12 thing. We'll just get, instead of talking about the players, your championship game prediction, the two teams that are in it, and who you think ultimately wins the Pac-12.
I've got 6-0 Oregon beating 6-0 USC in the Pac-12 championship.
I got the same thing, and if you want one more little tidbit, or not tidbit, but player of the year, offensive player of the year, Keaton Slovis, defensive player of the year, Kayvon Thibodeau. That's pretty much chalk.
Yeah, I think those two teams are pretty much. I'll go chalk with you guys on those as well. With USC and Oregon.
I'll take the 6-0 Sun Devils over the 6-0 Ducks in the championship, just to switch things up a bit. So that's
you're not picking Oregon to win this year, but interesting.
Nah,
okay. All right, whatever. Move on.
I've learned my lesson. All right, guys, time to move on to the pickups. We are literally, as I said, I'll say it now, gonna haul ass through these pickups because we have a good amount. For some of the bigger games, we could elaborate just a little bit. For the most part, no need to really say anything other than that. We got our pick'ems leaderboard. Lyle's still leading the way at 65, but his lead is only 3 points now. I'm coming up. I'm coming for that top spot, Lyle. I got 62. Brady with 59. Josh with 58. So again, with so many games and so many weeks still, it is anyone's game. But with the Pac-12 back, let's get things started in the Pac-12. Arizona at Utah.
I'm just not feeling it for Arizona. Good chance for Utah to work out some of their question marks. Got Utes.
Yeah, Utah won't be as good as they were last year, but most Kyle Whittingham coach teams are going to have successful years. Against Arizona, I got to take Utah.
I'm going with Utah.
Yeah, Utah, this one's easy. UCLA at Colorado.
This one's kind of a toss-up. I like DTR to get the win for the Bruins.
Yeah, I'll take UCLA.
I like DTR as well. A good returning quarterback, a good athlete, so I'm going to go UCLA.
Yeah, this one's going to be a clean sweep again. I'm going to go with the DTR UCLA with the dub. Stanford at number 12, Oregon.
I think Stanford scores to take a lead in the first quarter. They'll go up 7-0, and then I think they say stop the count, and then Oregon blows them out.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good tune-up game in a sense for Oregon. I don't think Stanford's going to be all that great this year. I think this is a first chance for Tyler Shuck to really get his feet under him. I think Oregon wins by a lot.
It's so weird hearing it pronounced Shuck now that we know it's actually Shuck.
Yeah.
I'm going Oregon. They have a pretty solid returning group of players. They're missing some of the big ones, but they have a good returning core and a good coach in the Pac-12. I'm going to go with Oregon.
I think I'm going to do this right here before anyone else can. I'm going to trademark this. So whenever Oregon pulls off a great win, whenever he has a great game, I'm going to say, Stanford, you got shucked. Get shucked. So that's going to be the thing right there. So I think Stanford, the Cardinals are going to get shucked this weekend. It's going to be a shuck fest, and I think that he's going to shuck them up. All right, I'm going to go. We're here now. Washington State at Oregon State.
I don't remember. I think it was Blake who said it. Oregon State. I think they might have a bounce back year. What that means in the overall context of the Pac-12, probably not much, but I think they get the win by a field goal. Beavs by a field goal.
I'm going to take Washington State. I'm interested to see what Nick Rolovich's team looks like in their first game, and Oregon State's obviously Oregon State. This one will be close. I'm going to take the Cougs.
I am going with Oregon State in this one. They have their head coach. They were, like I think Blake said earlier, or Josh, one win away from going bowling. Jonathan Smith has increased his win total every year he's been there, so I'm going to go Oregon State.
It's sad that there's no more Mike Leach in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
That's really unfortunate. He's too busy scoring 0 points a game to Mississippi State now. I'm going to go with Oregon State in this one. I think they're back. I think they might be back. All right, that ends our Pac-12 games now. Time to get to the rest of the slate, guys. Number 11, Miami at NC State.
Leary's a good quarterback. Wolfpack keep it close, but Miami wins.
Yeah, I'm going to take De'Ara King and the Canes.
King and the Canes on the road.
King of the Canes. Guys, this is a massive game tomorrow. It's going to be a fantastic one. Number 9, BYU at number 21, Boise State.
That's on Friday? That's a Friday game this week?
It's a Friday game.
Nice.
Told you guys this in our group chat earlier. This is the first time that BYU and Boise have ever played while both teams are ranked. And again, like Boise doesn't know who the starting quarterback's going to be week by week at this point. And that's not anything on either quarterback, because we just don't know what's up with Hank Bachmeier. Until that's figured out, I'm going to go with BYU.
Yeah, in most years, Boise State would be the team to take in this game because they're usually the dominant team. But I mean, Zach Wilson's looks so good. I'm going to go with BYU.
Zach Wilson and the Cougs are going to get business done against Boise State at the Smurf turf.
Also, this is Zach Wilson originally committed to Boise, and in 2017, a week before he was expected to sign on early signing day, he flipped to BYU. So for Boise, this is like the guy that got away.
Nice. Well, they have a pretty good quarterback now, so they're probably not too upset about it, but who knows? I'm going to go with my Mormons in this one. Number 23, Michigan at number 13, Indiana.
I'd love to see Tom Allen win, but Michigan's been pretty influential this past week. I'm taking the Wolverines.
Yeah, I got to go Michigan too. I think this game stays close, but I'm going to go Michigan.
I am claiming this victory for the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, I will say this. I'm going to say one thing quickly. I actually am picking Indiana in this game. I didn't pick them to beat Penn State, and they won. I picked them last week. They won. I'm going to pick them this week as a higher ranked opponent. Granted, they're the underdog by, I think, 2.5 points. But our good pal, my good pal, Griffin Gonzalez, he said to me, here's the key. Here's what you got to do. You have to deem Michigan as one of our biggest rivals, and then Harbaugh will struggle. That's all you got to do. Just say, Michigan is now one of our biggest rivals. And then Harbaugh will, probably go 0-6. It's
a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to do it, but I got to get the points. I'm going to go with Michigan in this game.
Pride over points, Blake.
West Virginia at number 22, Texas.
I learned today that West Virginia and Michigan are big rivals. I don't think they beat Texas. I think they ride the momentum from the OSU win to a 10-point win over the Nears.
Yeah, and we've talked about this West Virginia defense, that they've been pretty stout for the better part of this season, but I got to take Ellinger and the Longhorns here.
I'm going Texas. I think they're going to get semi back on track this week.
As much as I want to take Ron Wolfley and his Nears, I'm going to go with the Horns in this one. Number 14, Oklahoma State at Kansas State.
Bounce back win over Kansas State for number 14 OSU. I've got the Cowboys. Go Pokes.
I'm taking OSU, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I'm going Cowboys, and I'm going Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Again, Kansas State, they're currently tied for the top in the Big 12, so who knows, strange things have happened. Number 7, Texas A&M at South Carolina.
As we all know, I'm a big Ags guy, but that's a different team. But for the same name, I'm going to roll with Texas A&M.
Is Texas A&M really the 7th best team in the country? That I don't know, but they're better than South Carolina, so I'm going to take A&M.
Lyle just said, you brought up a great point. I was going to say Texas A&M's the highest ranked team we haven't heard anything about this year. So
it's pretty random.
It's very random. It's one of those teams like, I didn't even realize like Texas A&M was back to 7th. I'm going to go A&M on the road. I think they can get it done this week.
I mean, you guys know more than anyone that I love the Cox, but I got to go with the Ags in this one. Only 10-point favorites, so Vegas thinks this is going to be a closer game than some might. Michigan State at Iowa. Iowa, guys, they're 0-2 now.
This is going to be a really close game because Iowa is just so lacking on offense. And I think that Michigan State kind of is too. The difference maker for me, Sparty has different options on offense. They have more options on offense than Iowa has. So I like the Spartans to get the win on the road.
I'm going to take Iowa in a close one, Hawkeyes.
Tight end you. I'm going Iowa at home at this one. The fanless Big Ten.
Hawkinson is not available for this game, right?
Oh, really? What about Dallas Clark?
I heard is playing.
Oh, he is? Okay, good.
Michigan State, they're coming off that win against Michigan. I'm going to go with the Spartans as they ride momentum. Tennessee at Arkansas.
Two teams been tough to gauge this season. I think the Vols snap a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, I'll take Tennessee. Garantano bounces back.
I liked how Garantano has played throughout this year so far. He's been pretty inconsistent, but I feel like if he gets it together, could be a pretty decent quarterback. But seeing the word Arkansas just makes me say, America, explain. How is this one Kansas and this one not Arkansas? So, right. Josh, America, explain. I'm going to go Arkansas. I like what Felipe Franks will do this week. I think I'm going to go with the Suey Pigs, Arkansas.
Tennessee, they're due for a win. They won 8, 9 in a row. Now they've lost, I think Josh said 3 in a row. So things are weird there, but let's get weird and pick Tennessee to win this game. Troy at Georgia Southern.
I like Troy's offense. This is a legitimate pick. I looked at this game earlier. I looked at the two teams. I like Troy's offense.
Yeah, I'll take Troy on the road.
Troy has been soaring and flying, and there is not a star in heaven, Josh, that we can't reach. So
now we're trying. Oh, we're breaking free. We're breaking free.
That was a top 10 pick'em reason on this show.
I just thought of it. I'm going Troy on the road because why, Lyle?
Because why not?
Because why not?
This was gonna be my uni watch for Troy this past weekend, just because of their helmets. Go to the Uniswag or whatever it is Instagram account and look at what the helmets were for Troy this past weekend. Yeah. They were so nice and clean. They had some black and white fade of some sort. They were beautiful. For that reason alone, I'm gonna go with Troy. We got some good games, guys. Some 2 great games. Number 8, Florida. Number 5, Georgia. This is likely going to determine who's going to be playing in the SEC title game. This has playoff implications. I think if Florida loses this game, they're done. If Georgia loses this game, they're probably done. It's going to be a great game. It's one of Blake's bets. Georgia's favored by 3. Who do you guys like?
Well, as we know that when Florida has these big games and it's really important, it could really go either way. And for a long time, it's really, really close. Ultimately, I think Florida pulls ahead. But what have we learned? Georgia makes comeback. So I think Georgia's going to come back, and I think they win this game.
Yeah, I think it takes a while to learn the result of this one. I think it stays close, but I'm going to take Florida's offense against Georgia's defense just by a little bit, Florida.
Listen, Florida in the red zone has been pretty consistent. They've been pretty good red zone team for years. However, there were thoughts that their red zone offense this year was going to fall behind, but they ended up stepping up and having a pretty consistent red zone team. I mean, you got one of the best tight ends in the country in Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask. So I really like them, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Florida, they had all the hype, but I think Georgia's going to sneak this one out and get a win.
Florida's not going to let us down this time. They're going to get the win, and I like them in Blake's bet. All right, guys. Number 1, Clemson. Number 4, Notre Dame. What happens?
Good game for a while. I think ultimately Clemson declares victory early by the 3rd quarter, I think. Dude, I was right in the middle of it. Come on. I was so close to getting that in. Anyway, whatever. They declare victory early. It's fine, Clemson.
Even when Clemson was down last week, even without Trevor Lawrence, I was still sitting there watching that game, and I thought to myself, Clemson's still going to come back and win this. It'll stay close, maybe for the first half. Clemson wins. Clemson.
I think, although Notre Dame is at home, there are some fans. It's going to be that NBC game. I think Clemson is still the best overall team, but it's by a small margin. With Trevor not playing, I think there's more of a toss-up factor involved, but I think Clemson will get the win here on the road. And like Lyle said so many times, it's tough to beat a team twice.
Yeah, Lyle, I'm going to ask you because I will be betting on this game. So I need you to tell me you like Clemson to win this.
I do like Clemson to win.
All right. Now, do you like Clemson money line, or do you like them to win by more than 6 points? Because this could
more than 6.
Oh, so Lyle likes the spread. Well, there you go. Not only am I taking Clemson, guys, I'm taking Clemson -6. They cover. Good teams win, but great teams cover. Actually, no, that's incorrect because Clemson, I don't think, has covered a game yet this year. They didn't cover against Syracuse. They didn't cover against the Citadel when they literally were up 49-0 with 6 minutes left in the second quarter, and they didn't cover against Boston College. So you know what? No. I'm taking Notre Dame in the upset. I'm switching my picks because great teams cover, and Clemson, you're not a great team. Notre Dame, well, I'd have to look at what you've done against the spread this year, but it's probably better than what Clemson's doing. I'm taking Notre Dame, money line, not even +6. All right, guys, worst of the worst. North Alabama, as Josh said earlier in our chat, that's a school at Southern Miss.
So this was a weird one for me, and as we know, we've all got to have reasons for our worst of the worst, and I don't have a connection to either of these schools. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at all of the places I've lived for extended periods of my life. Number 1, Eastern Massachusetts. That Eastern Massachusetts gets us nowhere. Central Arizona, Maricopa County, pretty important all of a sudden, huh? But that still gets us nowhere. And Southern California. And I'm going to take that Southern. I'm going to take Southern Miss. I've got the Eagles.
Look, if that's the logic we're going off,
it is. Foolproof plan.
I live in, the place I've lived the longest is the Northwest. I don't know if North Alabama is in the Northwest part of the state, but they're in the North part. So I'm taking North Alabama, who we now know is a school.
Yeah. If our show were yesterday, this would make a lot of sense, but I'm going to carry it over to today. I looked up some notable alumni from both schools. North Alabama, you got Tony Dorsey, not the football player. Janoris Jenkins went to North Alabama. That's pretty cool. But Southern Alabama, 19 years ago today, the Arizona Diamondbacks won a World Series off the bat of Luis Gonzalez. Luis Gonzalez went to Southern Alabama, and therefore, I am going to go with Southern Alabama in this game.
It's Northern Alabama.
Southern Miss.
Yeah.
There you go.
Southern Miss. I'm going
Lyle,
Southern
it
Miss.
is Lyle. Florence, Alabama is about as far northwest as you can get in the state of Alabama.
I take back what I said, by the way. Luis Gonzalez went to Southern Alabama, but Brett Favre went to Southern Miss. So go Southern Miss.
To be honest, I was just surprised you got the Luis Gonzalez thing with the World Series and it being the date and all that.
I say we give it to him. Yeah.
Hey, do you know who else went to Southern Miss? Jimmy Buffett. You know who else went to Southern Miss? Ray Guy. There's some big people that went to Southern Miss.
That guy kicks balls for.
Well, I'm not going to go in depth on where I have lived and have that impact. What I'm going to do is look at the spread, see that Southern Miss is favored by about 2.5, 3 touchdowns, and I'm going to take Southern Miss for that very reason because I need a point. Which brings us to our final pick'em, guys. We can finally do this again. Arizona State at number 22, USC.
All right, so here's a phrase I've said all show. On paper, USC is the better team, but it's the first game of the season for both squads. A very, very strange season at that. If there's one game that USC has a high chance to lose, I think it's this week against Arizona State. And something we talked about earlier was the weapons that ASU is going to have. At receiver, there's more depth than in recent years, or at least in terms of lethality. Same thing at running back. They've got 3 good running backs to choose from. Bottom line, a lot of them are unproven, and I don't think it totally pans out this game. I've got USC by 6. I think if there's such thing as a good loss, it's a good loss for ASU. I think they keep it close. I think they learn a lot about the pieces that they have moving forward, and I think they win out after a 6-point loss to F on Saturday. USC.
Look, the last 2 years these schools have played, they've been phenomenal games, both at the Coliseum 2 years ago, in Tempe last year. Phenomenal games. I don't see any reason that trend's not going to continue on Saturday. I think it's a really, really good game. I think it's going to be pretty high scoring. I think both quarterbacks shine, but USC holds on long enough to get the win. I'll take USC by a score.
And the one thing people don't really remember is that we've never seen Jaden Daniels against this USC team or against the USC team. He was injured last year and had Joey Yellen in at quarterback. Now, I got some notes about this. I don't know if you want me to read some of them or some trivia because we're running long, but I guess who cares at this point? This is for ASU the first time opening on the road against a conference opponent since Washington in 1995. They lost 23-20. Now for USC, I'll ask you guys a trivia question here. This is the first time USC has opened its season with this type of game.
This type of game?
Conference.
Nope.
A home game.
Oh, a 9 a.m. game.
9 a.m. game, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Technically 9 a.m. Yes, they had one that started at 9:30, but this is the first time USC's ever opened their season with a homecoming game. So this is homecoming for USC.
Interesting.
Also, November 7th.
Who can even go to the game?
I don't know.
They're all
Also-
going to be coming home to an empty stadium.
Exactly. 9 a.m. kickoff, whatever. Isn't it 10 in California?
No, 9.
No, it's 9.
It's 9.
10 in Arizona. Got it. So the November 7th date is the latest USC has opened up a season since 1918 when Troy opened up against Stanford. Hang on. Oh, yeah, when Troy. So when USC opened up against Stanford on November 23rd, because public gatherings in Los Angeles were banned in October due to the Spanish flu.
Aha.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
You read the
History?
game notes, didn't you?
I did read the game notes.
Yes, I read them too.
Yeah, so I copied and pasted it. History repeats itself. After all of that, I was just dropping stats. I'm going USC, but ASU will cover. So there's my useless knowledge for the week.
I got no stats. I got money on the line. I like ASU plus 11, but for that reason, why not? We'll ride the money line. It's a plus 300. I'll put something down on that plus 300. If anyone out there wants plus 300 action, let me know because I'll get you on that plus 300 action. ASU, they get it the win. I think Brady said it perfectly. Every matchup between ASU and USC, going back to Jalen Strong 6-7 years ago, whenever that was, these have been great matchups. Last year was a great matchup. The year before was a great matchup. Brady had the greatest photo of all time that was blocked by
Come Marshall.
Yeah, blocked by Bill Iman. So I'm going to go with the Sun Devils in this one. All right, guys, that does wrap up this extra long show, this 2-hour show of the Harris Highlight Show. A lot of great content. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the HH Show _. That way, when we postpone a show, that way we have to move a show. You guys know that way you guys aren't tuned in on Tuesday and saying, where's the show? You guys can follow us on Instagram. You guys can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You guys can donate. You guys can do whatever it is you need to do. Anything like that helps the show out. Patreon, all that stuff. It's all in the description of this video. Give this video a thumbs up if you're still watching right now. Drop a comment. Brady has something he wants to say.
Do we want to do a game a money pool for this week for the game like we did a few weeks ago?
We'll do a money pool, so follow us on Twitter if you want to win some money.
We want to do ASU USC since those are our teams. And
All
we
right, ASU USC. I'll give you 25. Brady will give 25. These two up here are still to be determined. So that's at least $50 you can win if you go follow us on Twitter at the HH Show _. We'll tweet it out tomorrow because it's an early 9 a.m. game. So if you want to win money by having to do absolutely nothing, go follow us on Twitter. Bring your best guesses. And that's all for me. Anything parting words, guys, before we move on to the rest of the week?
Have a good week.
Hey, have a good week. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Count your chickens. As Lyle's boy, Marshawn Lynch said.
Take care of your chicken.
Yes.
Count your blessings. Take care of your chickens.
As Ron Burgundy once said in Anchorman 2, don't just have a great day. Let's all have an American day. Just remember, although we didn't get him on this year, Harris Highlights 2020, I am now officially endorsing my own self for Harris Highlights 2024 or Harris Highlights 2021, Mayor of Monrovia, California. It's not too late. If you guys want to get one of these shirts, just hit me up and we can get that. It's about $25. Brady gets $1 for doing the design. So Harris Highlights 2020, not too late. As I said earlier, we had 14 write-in votes this year. So not the numbers we were hoping for, not the numbers we were expecting, but we'll get them next time. For Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, Brady Klein, this has been Blake Harris, and MJ's dog Peely, who's been over there this entire time. All that stuff is in the description of this video. Fear the Fork, leave a thumbs up, drop a comment. It's been a fun time, but it's getting late because I have a dinner I got to get to. Thank you guys so much for
tired and hungry.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in. This was a fun blast. We're going to see all you guys right back here again next week.